It's Thursday, September 5th, 2019, and that means we're breaking each one of these contests down individually, game by game. And we're glad to have all of you here with us. It's going to be one hell of a fun show. Sal, glad to have you back, man. Your first show on Tuesday, your debut at awesomemode.com was a hit.
Really? Is that what they're saying? I had no idea how I did. So
that's what I'm saying, man.
And you're saying. Okay, I appreciate that.
That's what the commenters said as well. Go back on YouTube, check out the comments. You got a lot of love, my man.
Okay, that's awesome. Thank you, everybody in the comments. I only have like a laptop right now, trying to work on another screen, so can only look at a couple of things at once. I didn't get to see the comments, but yeah, it was awesome Tuesday. Happy to now we have ownership and we have a bunch of other stuff to kind of go off of, just people practicing and breaking down the whole slate. It's gonna be fun, man.
Yep, it certainly is. Look at that. We already got 7 thumbs up and we haven't started yet. We got the best viewers in the damn world. We love you guys. Glad to have all of you here. Stick with us. We're not gonna run too long, but certainly gonna be here for a little while because we got a whole lot to talk about. By the way, just get this out of the way first. It's important. Suggest you listen. If you haven't checked out Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports yet, they've got some incredible contests for week 1. Some really great contests. The $1 Million Baller, $25 to entry or to enter, 10 entry max. So there are no MME participants, no 150 max, none of that. 10 entry max, 25 to enter, and you can get $30 in Yahoo Sports Rewards points just by signing up through us at awesomemode.com. Go to the MLB tab, click articles. You'll see the Spotlight Hitters article. We've still got it there under baseball, but it's very simple. All you have to do is click that link at the top of the article. It's 100% free. And when you sign up, you deposit, get up to $30 in Yahoo Sports Rewards points, which you can use on the site as money, as good as cash to play and win money at Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports. And by the way, if you're a smaller bankroll player, you wanted to throw 10 entries into the $1, it's a $25K contest. $4K to first. They got an awesome free roll running all season long with a winner at the end with the highest cumulative score at the end of the season. So yeah, check it out. Sign up through us. It's on the Spotlight Hitters article. You can always just search it on the site, totally free. And use the sign up code AWESOMO if you'd like as well to get your $30 in Yahoo Sports Rewards points. Chris Brown says, Laffy, don't hurry, bro. Love to listen to you guys. Appreciate it. Kevin Voigt, Laffy, take all the time you need. Here's another one. Sal is a great pickup for Awesemo. Congrats, man. Look, I don't want to waste all the time, but we got some standards to live up to this morning, Sal.
Oh, yeah, we'll live up to them. That's fine. I appreciate everybody in the comments. Thank you.
All right, let's jump into it. Number one, we're gonna get into game by game. We're gonna do a more comprehensive breakdown one by one. We're gonna try not to miss a damn thing, but there was this morning I was making all of my groups and setting everything up for Fantasy Cruncher for week 1. And I thought to myself, a good topic of conversation is, and by the way, Manny Laura is going to be with us tomorrow. He's going to be on the strategy show. Manny's awesome when it comes to Fantasy Cruncher stuff, man. Highly suggest you tune in for that show. You will appreciate it and it will help you out. Even if you're not an MME player and you like hand-making lineups, it's still beneficial to listen to this because it helps you better understand correlation. So I thought to myself as I'm making these groups and I'm running it back with other players from the opposite team in game stacks, I'm thinking there is a misconception at times that you can't run like a team stack where, say, you have Matt Ryan, Julio Jones, and Calvin Ridley, that you can't run that back with a running back and it has to be a pass catcher. But it's not true. It just depends on who this guy is. Moreover, it's not true that you can't pair a running back with your quarterback. You just don't want it to be Derrick Henry. You know, like if it's a Christian McCaffrey or Saquon Barkley type, that can be super. There's clear positive correlation there. So let's just take a look at it quick. And I'm going to throw this to you, Sal. Before we jump into the actual question marks, which guy might not be a 3-down back? Which guys do we expect to have that passing down work? Of all the players, or of all the teams on this slate specifically, we don't need to get into the Kamaras and such, which running backs can we say are solidified as the 3-down guys, are bona fide 3-down backs that we don't really have to worry about and could pair with our quarterbacks?
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, taking this as a stance for what we know right now, Zeke and Saquon 100% on the top end, and McCaffrey kind of into that tier as well with no Kamara on this slate. But those three guys as three down backs make sense. McCaffrey has goal line concerns, but not going to group that in right now. Todd Gurley, a guy who's been everybody's scared of right now for season long reasons, he's still a three down back out there. McVay said he's going to get 80 to 85+% of the load, and he will catch passes for sure, probably the best pass catching back the last year. And then you get David Johnson, Le'Veon Bell, Nick Chubb, Fournette, and Chris Carson are some of the top end guys I listed here. Derrick Henry, like you mentioned, not a pass catcher on third down, but they plan to use him on three downs because they plan to run majority of the time in that offense, the way that they're building it. Devonta Freeman and Dalvin Cook are the main three down ones that I put down for week one, feeling confident in. The one and maybe two that I'll kind of throw to you is Joe Mixon, and I feel as if he is a three down back, but the deal that they just signed with Giovanni Bernard, they're almost incentivized to keep him on the field when they just gave him like a $6 million bonus for, I think this year alone, $10 million total in the extension. And then Mark Ingram will be the last one. But last year, backup running backs in Baltimore saw 10 carries a game, but they're going to run so much that maybe it doesn't even matter in terms of his overall usage.
Okay, so just to recap, give me the list, simply names of the guys that you think this week will be three down backs.
Yes. Zeke, Saquon, McCaffrey, Gurley, David Johnson, Le'Veon Bell, Nick Chubb, Leonard Fournette, Chris Carson, Derrick Henry, Devonta Freeman, Dalvin Cook, and then the question mark on Joe Mixon.
All right. I love it. Now, I want to not push back, but I want to ask you a question about Christian McCaffrey, because we had heard that Christian McCaffrey was going to cede some of his goal line work to a backup. So after all of the cuts, we're basically in a position where it seems as though Jordan Scarlett could be the guy taking some of that work. Now, I think it's silly because McCaffrey was actually pretty efficient in terms of scoring last season, or at least scored the bulk of his touchdowns from inside. Or let me check it out. I'm pretty sure he had a decent amount of goal line touchdowns. I had the stat up and now I lost it. But it seems as though he could be giving away some of that to Scarlett. To me, it's not a huge concern, especially given his ability as a pass catcher. But do you think that's worth worrying about, knowing that Christian McCaffrey might not be the guy getting the ball on the goal line like he did almost all of the time last year?
Yeah, it's definitely worth worrying about. I have to see it first before week one.
For sure.
Yeah, I have to see it first before week one because there's not like a CJ Anderson back there or somebody who is kind of actually being cemented into an offense. There's an unproven Jordan Scarlett who is going to be the backup since they cut Cameron Artis-Payne. So I don't believe it right now, but it would make sense if you're on a 3-yard line and you want to put somebody in who's a little bit bigger. But I don't think that kind of takes away a 3-down status from a McCaffrey.
Okay. Hey, by the way, we're going to touch on showdown slate today at the end of the show. We'll do a quick little recap on that. But Ben Rasa and Alex Baker, Awesemo himself, will do a live before lock on that game tonight. So you'll want to be here. And then we'll take your questions at the end of the show. So I see some questions rolling in. Hold off on them. Sal and I will get to them as we proceed. We got plenty of time to talk. So, okay, you gave those names, and I agree with you. And I think, obviously guys like Barkley and Fournette, there's literally nothing to worry about there. A few of the other ones, I agree, they are the 3-down guys, but how much they're involved in the passing game, how confident I feel pairing them with a quarterback is a slightly different story. For one, Ezekiel Elliott, normally it's a no-brainer. Ezekiel Elliott is getting all of the work possible. Do we think he'll be limited at all coming back from this holdout, not practicing with the first team and maybe them wanting to go a little easy on him? Or do you see this being a spot? Because we've seen a bunch of speculation, a bunch of varying reports. Do you think that Ezekiel Elliott is good to go for his normal workload?
Yeah, so I definitely don't buy the 20, 25 reps in terms of a snap count because that's like a quarter and a half.
And if it's 20 to 25 snaps, he's probably going to see 20 touches. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Like I can't see any way in which if he's sitting out in Cabo just lounging out the whole time, maybe he's not in shape. But he was out there working out with Hall of Fame running backs out there with him. And not only that, they were literally relaying almost the entire time the Cowboys 2-minute drill offense to him and what they were running. So he knows the playbook to a good extent. He came in on Wednesday, practiced fully. I can't see them limiting him to this 20 to 25 rep that they were saying. Again, that's less than a half. I think he's going to be completely fine. If they limit him in any sense, it would be more so coming from just giving Tony Pollard more work because he's almost earned it. But even then, what are they going to give Tony Pollard 6 to 8 touches in that scenario? Maybe, which even then you're still probably seeing 20, just based on game flow for this game, around 20 plus for Zeke in the air and on the ground. So I don't buy the 20 to 25. I'm not, unless something else comes out. But right now I'm kind of looking at it as if Zeke is going to get a normal run, but also Tony Pollard probably gets rewarded because he does seem like somebody they want to get into this offense with a couple of snaps more.
Yeah, and even if Pollard does get a little bit involved, it's very important not to ignore the fact that the Cowboys are 7.5-point favorites at home. It's very likely that they're going to run the ball a lot in this game, so there should be more than enough work for Zeke. And right now, his projected ownership is coming in around 7%. Compare that to guys like McCaffrey and some of the other top price guys. There's serious upside there if you're looking to get a little bit different. Now, granted, we could see this ownership change now that everything's ironed out in Dallas, but pay attention to that. If those concerns aren't quelled by Sunday, it could be a very, very appealing spot. All right, 2 more for you. Did you mention Kerryon Johnson as a 3-down guy?
No, I didn't put him on the list.
So do you think he will be?
So, I mean, that offense is going to run a ton, and he should be. If I think I will be, I'm not totally sure right now. They have talks of Ty Johnson coming down, Ty Johnson on 3rd downs right now. All the talk that's going out there is that he should see 15 to 18 touches a game, but he's not going to be out there for a lot of the pass catching work, which overall for his value, I don't think it definitely hurts it, but I don't think the amount that they're going to run is going to completely crush it in terms of playing him for week 1. But from what they're saying right now, it doesn't look like he'll be on the field for at least to start the year, a ton of pass catching work. And there's been interviews in the preseason and camp of Patricia saying that he wants to kind of be careful with Kerryon Johnson as if they're like trying to fight for the playoffs or anything like that, save him week 1. It doesn't make much sense to me. I don't know what they're doing out there, but I don't really view him as a bona fide 3-down back, probably more of a question mark in the range of guys I have on here like Mixon and Ingram. Yeah.
Okay. And last one, Aaron Jones was the clear top back in Green Bay last season. It wasn't even up for debate. I mean, when you look at the amount of 10-yard plus runs this guy had, unlimited opportunities, wildly impressive. Yards per carry, he was up there at 5.5. He got into the end zone 8 times on only 133 carries. Aaron Jones was spectacular last season under a head coach that over the years has not exactly been keen on running the football. So now Mike McCarthy is gone, which cannot be understated. Matt LaFleur's in there as your head coach. How do you see Aaron Jones' role changing or possibly evolving with this Green Bay Packers offense?
Yeah. And I mean, I'm a Packers fan. So in terms of the Mike McCarthy talk, absolute donkey since they melted down in Seattle. But
I'm going to Lambeau Field to watch the Eagles play the Packers this month, and I could not be more excited.
Yeah, that's fantastic. But yeah, for the game tonight, in terms of Aaron Jones, the biggest concern or the reason that they keep giving Jamal Williams work last year outside of Mike McCarthy really not keeping talent on the field that much was just pass protection, and they liked what he could do in the passing game. Well, this offseason, Aaron Jones, 2 of the biggest things that they said were looking good were 1, pass protection, and 2, he's catching the ball, and he was already a good pass-catching running back, just wasn't used enough. But LaFleur said they're going to use him even more in the pass-catching game. If he was on the main slate, he'd probably be somebody that I listed in as a 3-down back. The speculation of Jamal Williams still back there, kind of the valuable reasons why they had Jamal Williams in there so much are now already in Aaron Jones from this offseason as kind of skills that he increased and developed and cultivated a little bit more. So I would expect him to take a step forward this year. They still say that they don't want to give him a 25 carry per game type of deal, but when your offense is going to be with Aaron Rodgers, it's probably not going to be the case anyways. The pass catching upside's there for him. Yeah, he's a borderline 3-down back right now in my eyes, and that's something that's been kind of waiting to break out for like a year now.
Yeah, we can touch on him later once we get to this showdown game between the Packers and the Chicago Bears. You ready to talk some game by game?
Yeah, let's do it. I'm excited.
All right, man. Let's start with the 1 p.m. games. First on the docket, Carolina Panthers, Los Angeles Rams. I expect this to be a pretty good game. And Vegas right now has the Panthers as 2.5-point home dogs, so nothing extreme. The over-under here is 50 points, though. One of the highest on the slate. 23.75 implied total for the Panthers, 26.25 for the LA Rams. Let's start with the home team. We already talked a little bit about Christian McCaffrey and the potential to cede goal line touches to potentially Scarlett, but he's still going to be one of the most heavily involved running backs in the National Football League. And I don't think really none of that is up for debate. Last year he saw 124 targets. He surpassed 100 receptions with 107, had 867 receiving yards, came just shy of 2,000 total yards from scrimmage. It was an outstanding season, 13 total touchdowns. Christian McCaffrey, 2.5 point dog up against the Carolina Panthers. Let's discuss him first, and then we'll get to Cam Newton.
Yeah, definitely. So McCaffrey listed right now at 8,800 for week 1 on DraftKings. The only concerns with me kind of comparing him to the top end are a couple things. One, ownership to some extent, especially when you see Zeke coming in at 7% right now and hoping that stays there personally, but probably comes up. But right now, Christian McCaffrey, ownership. And then number 2 is just the goal line work like we kind of touched on. When you have Saquon, who is going to be an underdog, a pretty big underdog, and not like McCaffrey, a home favorite, which just playing home favorites is always great for DFS purposes.
McCaffrey's a slight home dog.
Oh, he's a slight home dog right now?
Yeah, 2.5 points. But still, it's not a lot.
Okay. All right. So, yeah. So right now, just in that range, I'm going to be getting to more of Zeke, definitely at that ownership. Don't buy the snap count limited 20 to 25. And then also more of just Saquon, because I know these guys are going to get all the goal line work and not come off the field at all, which McCaffrey might not based on coach speak. But I kind of want to see it if I'm actually putting those into my lineups at the exact same price point. And as of right now, we have Saquon coming in slightly lower ownership. And then we touched on Zeke, a lot of lower ownership right now by a couple of just multiples. So, yeah, definitely a great play. Cash, he's fine. It's really just your preference at that point. Going to be heavily involved. It's just when it get down to the nitty gritty, the price points aren't that far off on these guys. And I'd rather take the guy who I know is going to be in there inside the 10, touching the ball probably twice in Saquon.
Now, Cam Newton's got a few weapons to target, whether it be DJ Moore, who with Devin Funchess limited or sidelined last season, seemed to have that mini breakout towards the end of his rookie campaign. He was the first wide receiver drafted in that draft class. And then you've got Curtis Samuel. There's definitely some hype around him. And Greg Olsen returning from yet another foot injury. He seems to be healthy enough to go. And to be fair to Olsen, when healthy, he has been one of the best fantasy producing tight ends in football. It's very difficult to predict what you're going to see from him this year, though, coming back from yet another lengthy hiatus. What are your thoughts on Newton in this passing game in Carolina?
Yeah, so touching on Olsen to start, I don't have much interest just due to what you were saying. There's a lot of volatility and injury for an older tight end. And he also, even when he was healthy, I guess you can put air quotes on if he was actually healthy last year, he wasn't used much in this offense through Turner. So I'm probably going to stay away from there, even in the same range as like in Austin Hooper. I'd rather get there. In terms of the passing game, Samuel and DJ Moore, towards the second half of last year is really when Samuel started to emerge. They were both, I believe it was 43 targets for Moore the second half, and Samuel had 42. So 1A, 1B pretty much. This preseason, it seemed as if Curtis Samuel was generating the hype because he was becoming Newton's favorite target in the preseason game for a very small portion of that, but mainly in camp. So the price point difference, Samuel garnering ownership, getting a lot of hype makes a lot of sense, and I do agree with it. And then, now that Cam's kind of practiced, people are kind of away from the questionable tag. They know that he's going to be playing. There's still concerns just around the shoulder injuries that he's had. I don't have as much concerns around there, but he's going to be more of a pocket passer, and he's already stated that he knows he has to kind of stay healthy for this team if they want to make a deep run into the season, into the playoffs. So you're going to lose mobile upside there, which is worrisome if you're paying up for him. So I think in that top range of quarterbacks, there's other guys I'm going to get to when you don't have the same Cam Newton of a potential 40, 50-yard rushing game in him. I think he'll still be moving around, just not nearly as aggressive. The pass-catching options, though, in Samuel and Moore, have interest in both, more so Samuel for the obvious price discount. And I don't think the ownership on Samuel right now, definitely not for cash. It's not going to matter. He's fine for a cash play. And right now, I think it makes sense even at his ownership in tournaments.
What about DJ Moore and Curtis Samuel?
Yeah, so for Samuel and Moore, Samuel, I prefer just to him, just due to the fact that he already was like the 1B out there last year, and he's going to be coming into this year. It seems as if the number one wide receiver in that offense, and really just the pricing thing at that point, you're saving, I believe, $1,300. And for cash games, makes sense. And then if you're talking about tournaments, I agree with the ownership for Samuel at that point. But Moore is going to have some sort of leverage, a direct leverage off of him in terms of ownership. Not so much price range, though.
Sorry, if you mentioned them already, totally my fault. I was looking at some of our comments and questions. You'll learn this about me. Sometimes I'll ask you something twice. If I do, just say, Laffy, I already just explained that, over the course of 5 minutes and you missed it all. Totally understood.
You're fine. I actually got worried because I just got this microphone, so I didn't know if it cut out. And in my head, I was like, did I just buy
no, that's all me, bro.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so looking at the Rams, Todd Gurley, had there been no concerns towards the end of last season, in my opinion, would have been still the number one back off the board in all fantasy formats, right?
Yes.
And if he was 7,900 on this slate, once again, with no concerns, Todd Gurley would be the chalkiest player on the board. However, that isn't the case. What is the case, though, is that Darrell Henderson caught so much hype early in the summer. I did drafts in June and early July where he was being drafted in the 6th and 7th round, not even to handcuff Gurley, but just because they thought he'd be the guy. Well, that hype, that shine has worn off. And then you've got Malcolm Brown, who is still on this football team. And I don't know who's going to be the primary backup. It might just be a split between the two of them. That's unimportant. What's important is how often are they going to have to back up Gurley, and what type of workload do we expect for him in week 1?
Yeah, right now, Todd Gurley, just looking at the ownership that we have coming in, he might be one of the best leverage plays on the entire slate because of what you said. He's only 7,900. And the concerns for Gurley in all the media right now for fantasy purposes are just season-long leagues. Is week 3 or 4 is the week that his kind of just knee messes up and inflames and he's out for 2 months. But you're getting the best version of Todd Gurley right now for week 1, fully healthy to at least as much as we know or much as he's going to be. McVay already said he'll start the year with 80+% of the load. And he's 7,900 in one of the top 3 fastest paced game I have right now. Based on last year, this would be the fastest paced game if using Football Outsiders pace plays per game. So I love the spot. I understand why the ownership's not there because of just worries and bad negative publicity for him. And also the fact that you can pay up a little bit more and get to some of the top guys, or there's so much running back value below him. But Todd Gurley right now for GPP purposes, if he's going to remain at sub 10% ownership at $7,900, you're not even having to pay for him. I like it a lot. He's one of my favorite GPP plays at this point. And what is your stance on that? Because I think all the worry is really for season long, but it's carried over into, at least right now, week 1.
Yeah, and I mentioned this to you, maybe it was you Tuesday or Spags yesterday, that you can get a pretty good idea of what ownership will look like based on the hype and the decisions and the ADP movements throughout the last month of drafts and season long, right?
Yeah.
And we've seen that a lot. We've seen quite a bit of that play into what ownership looks like here. And I'm talking about just for week 1, week 1, because, there's this notion, really preconceived notion on a lot of players that factors into this. With Todd Gurley, man, if his ownership is going to come in at sub 10%, then it's really difficult for me not to have interest here. And just kind of to add on, and by the way, by sub 10%, right now on Draftkings, we're looking at 6% ownership. Be aware this will change throughout the week. You'll definitely want to, if you're an Awesemo subscriber, you'll definitely want to check this back out on Sunday morning. Once we have the final updates, it's really important to have that, especially if you're crunching lineups. But at 6% right now, it's so difficult not to get pretty enthusiastic about having some of Gurley in your lineup. And look, when you talk about the implied totals here, the only teams with higher implied totals are the Chiefs, Eagles, Seahawks, and basically, Rams are tied with the Cowboys. So they're the 4th highest implied total on the slate overall. And Gurley, when healthy, is going to be involved both as a runner and as a receiver. Sub 8K on Gurley is too nice to pass up in tournaments. And I think really if I came in with even, 15%, 13%, I'd be doubling up on the field. Yeah,
and I think another thing just to kind of think about as to why the ownership might be lower on Gurley, and honestly, these players on the Rams in general, people are going to just somewhat remember the last game they saw in the NFL season, the Super Bowl. They didn't look great. And then for the preseason, none of these Rams played a single game. Nothing was really made of them for all that much. It was just the Rams aren't playing their starters, and there was not much media around them other than Todd Gurley's knee is messed up. So for the most part, you're probably going to get one of the best, if not the best game environment on the slate. I would say top 2 or 3 to stack, and people are going to kind of stay away from it just because they haven't heard much about what's going on in there, and what they have heard is negative.
For sure. Now the pass catchers on this team, it's an interesting one to break down. You have Cooper Kupp, who's back in the mix. Last season, he was out for an extended period of time, done for the year, as a matter of fact. And then you've got Brandon Cooks and Robert Woods. Now, one thing I find interesting about these guys is when you take a look at targets last season, keep in mind Cooper Kupp was out for a while. Brandon Cooks saw 116 targets, 80 receptions, 1,204 yards, and 5 touchdowns. Robert Woods saw more targets with 131, a few more receptions with 86, basically the same yardage, 12-19, and 6 touchdowns. But despite all of this, it sure feels like Woods is your guy in PPR that you can rely on quite a bit. You can still rely on Cooks, but with that big play upside, he becomes a very appealing player just based on his ability to break off long touchdowns. And I think touchdowns, it's a volatile stat. You know, if Cooks had 9 touchdowns or 10 touchdowns this season, it was not like it would be a huge surprise.
No, yeah, I agree with you. And just for these 3, target shares last year when Kupp was healthy out there, they were all right around like 22 to 24%. They were all getting looks.
It was the only team, I think, that had 3 players with 20+% market shares after the first 7 weeks of the year.
Yeah, that's just ridiculous. And I really want to know what would have happened if Kupp breaks away or if it just stays. I don't know. But I guess maybe we'll get to see this year. And for this week, I actually think I have the least interest in Robert Woods out of all of them. In cash, I guess he's fine. But talking GPPs, if they're running 11 personnel, they're going to have probably the most snaps with Cooper Kupp in the slot, which him being in the slot is going to help Woods just in terms of overall efficiency, productivity, and the matchup. If there's any sort of shadow treatment in this game and just being on the outside, Woods is probably going to get more of Bradbury, which would be the toughest matchup. So I probably have the least interest there. The one that I have the most interest in is going to be Brandon Cooks. He's going to face his own defense, and his entire career, he just shreds zone defense. The last 2 years, he's been top 10 in terms of receiving yards when facing his own defense. So a big play upside. It matches GPP format great, and this would be a defense in a week that I would kind of take that risk on him if there's a risk at all. In just what he's going to be doing out there. I think he was top 5 last year in yards against his own defense, top 10 the last 2 years. And then Kupp kind of just falls into the, they're saying great things about him all preseason. They're saying the injury it looks like it's completely over, which is kind of hard to believe, the recovery for this guy. But if he's going to go right back into the slot and take on the same role he had last year as arguably the favorite target of Goff, then I'm going to have interest there as well. But right now for me, it's going to be the most in Cooks just due to the zone defense that he's going to get to try and burn.
Yeah, and by the way, McVay ran 11 personnel 90% of the time last year.
Crazy.
The next closest team was like 78% or something. Ridiculous. But you mentioned, it'll throw Cooper Kupp in the slot. But one really appealing aspect of that, regardless of which one of these pass catchers you like, is that all 3 of these receivers are going to be on the field an astounding amount of the time. Look at snap counts when all 3 of them were healthy last year. I'm pretty sure they were all around 90% or higher.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a huge deal. And that's one thing that will keep them all on the field. If you ranked them, who would be your favorite? Would it be Cooks, Kupp, Woods?
Yes, that's how I would go. And also just even more for Kupp. I mean, for Kupp, it's probably Kupp for cash. Cooks definitely for GPP. But even more for Kupp, just the matchup in the slot, they don't even know right now, the Panthers, who their slot cornerback is still, like to this day. And that's not because they have such great talent there. They're still trying to decide who they trust more, which is just even more of an advantage for Kupp. So, yeah, it would be Cooks, Kupp, and then Woods. But it's not like it's far off for all those guys.
Right. And by who they trust more, it's by who they don't trust the least.
Yes, exactly.
There's not a whole lot to feel confident about there whatsoever. So this is a spot where I think, I don't want to say the Rams shred them. I actually think it'll be a competitive game. But As far as game stacks go, Sal, and this is why we're spending so much time on this single game.
Yeah.
As far as game stacks go, I certainly think this could be one of the better game stacks, assuming Cam Newton's health isn't an issue.
Yep, I agree.
All right, let's keep it moving. Cleveland, Tennessee. We'll start at quarterback. Baker Mayfield, Marcus Mariota. Not much to speak of on the latter, but Baker Mayfield scared some people with that Week 3 preseason performance. Not really a whole lot to talk about there, nor should there be. But he's equipped with a bevy of weapons now. He's got a stable of great pass catchers. Odell Beckham Jr., Jarvis Landry, one of the best possession guys in the league. And then, of course, David Njoku, very, very big athletic tight end that should improve upon last season's numbers. Where do you stand on Mayfield and these pass catchers for the Cleveland Browns against the Titans?
Yeah, so for Baker right now, just where he's coming in at his price point, the matchup is actually not great at all. And the pace overall is what's concerning me the most. This is probably shaping up to be the second slowest paced game. If you use last year's just statistics from Football Outsider, which, I mean, a lot of things are going to change. But as a baseline, less than 120 plays would be projected for this game, which isn't great. The total, though, for Cleveland is actually respectable at 25.25. The last time I updated the sheet, it was standing at. But right now in his price range, I'm going to other options around him and even below him. But I do have interest in the pass catchers. Odell's matchup is just going to be so juicy. And the fact that he hasn't been practicing, he's a full go right now, but people seeing that he's dealing with an injury slightly in preseason hopefully lowers his ownership a little bit. Adore Jackson is not going to be keeping up with him. Gave up top 10 in terms of receiving yards to the wide receivers last year. Right now, there have been extra emphasis on kind of developing a connection this preseason and offseason with Odell and Baker. So I have a lot of interest in Odell, especially on a slate where I don't imagine a lot of people will be prioritizing top-end wide receivers. And then another name to kind of keep an eye on in the passing attack is Rashard Higgins, who's going to be priced close to the bottom of the floor in pricing right now for wide receivers. He's cheap, and he's going to get to be going up against Malcolm Butler on the opposite end while Landry's in the slot. He'll move into the slot a little bit, but mainly on the outside against Butler, who also, like Jackson, gave up top 10 in terms of receiving yards last year when they were man-to-man with wide receivers. So it's a good spot for Higgins, who actually has a pretty good connection preseason and also just camp with Baker Mayfield. It's a GPP only if you're stacking this, take a dart on it type play. But he's somebody who's interesting. I don't have interest in Landry this week, and I'm very low on him overall for the season. He's kind of made a living just being the number one receiver and just getting peppered with targets in the slot. Now you already saw last year in Kitchens' offense, he started to see 4 less targets per game once Freddie Kitchens took over. And then you're putting in finally an elite wide receiver to go along with him, which is good overall for the offense. But for Landry, it's going to take much more targets away from him towards Odell. For season long, that's obviously not great. But even this week, he'll probably get the toughest matchup in the slot against Logan Ryan, who's just a lot bigger of a cornerback than Landry as a receiver.
Yeah, and not to mention touchdown equity there isn't exactly great.
Exactly.
So, yeah. Would you rank Cleveland as one of your favorite or middle of the road bottom teams as far as, say, pairing Baker Mayfield with a couple of pass catchers, or just one of them?
It's honestly probably middle of the road to bottom just because I'm getting to so little Baker. I have interest in Odell, a good amount of interest. So that's probably where I get to the most on this team. But just because I don't have as much interest in Baker this week is why I'm not getting there all that much. And really, it's just because of the pace, the main thing. They're going to have to be really efficient in this game. And I'm a little bit concerned about the pace compared to just other quarterbacks in his price tier and also below him. I don't think I have to kind of force what should be just a revamped Cleveland offense week 1.
You and I talked at length about Nick Chubb on Tuesday. If you missed that show, go ahead and check it out. It's on the Awesemo YouTube channel. Yesterday, Chris Spags and I talked about ownership. We took a first look at ownership, took a deep dive into that as well. So both of those shows are up there for your viewing pleasure. If you've got time throughout the day, I'd recommend it. Nick Chubb, pretty reasonably priced. I don't think you'd be overpaying for Chubb really anywhere. And I think that's one of the reasons that I'm not opposed to getting some exposure to him. When I ran my first crunch, I think I had around 20%, maybe like 18%. I'll go in and check that out again. But Nick Chubb was someone that came up a decent amount for me just based on price. Now, mind you, I also set limits on guys like Dalvin Cook and Eckler based on that projected ownership. But it does seem like a spot where he's going to get a lot of work. Now, what he does with that, how efficient he is yet to be seen. But I don't see any real reason that Nick Chubb would give up any work to anyone else in this backfield throughout this game.
Yeah, I have interest in Chubb. And right now, my interest is pretty much matching the field if I had to kind of classify that. The total's nice. Nick Chubb is going to get all of 3-down work and pass catching work in this game. So you're going to have just overall a floor from the pass catching abilities with no Duke Johnson there anymore. The worry would come in that Tennessee does limit just rushing abilities and overall points to the running back, including pass catching running backs. They were bottom 3 in the league last year, less than 20 points per game to the running back position. And yeah, right now I'm just going to be matching the field for the most part. The pace again here, just for this entire team, is something that I worry about. But he'll have all the goal line opportunities, and that's really not much more you could ask for in terms of the usage that this guy's going to get, at least for the first 8 to 9 weeks of the season.
Yeah, right now we've got Chubb at 13% on Draftkings, 18% on Fanduel at that $7,400 price tag. So the other side, Derrick Henry, not exactly a spot that I feel confident. I will say over the course of the season, assuming he's healthy, I would expect Derrick Henry to get a ridiculous amount of carries this year. He proved over the final quarter of last season that he's capable of shouldering a big workload, and he was very, very efficient with those numbers. If you look at yards after contact, tackles avoided, all those Pro Football Focus metrics, he was very good there in all of them last season. But against this Cleveland defense and against this defensive front, he could have a tough time running. And there's also a chance that they play from behind. Right now, the line on this game is Cleveland. Let me find it here. I lost it. If you have it, feel free to. Okay, here we go. So Cleveland.
5 left I saw.
Yeah, 45 over under, 19.75 implied total for the Titans. They're 5.5 point road dogs. What's your thought on thinking on Henry? And we don't have to spend much time on him, assuming you feel the same way I do.
Yeah, I feel the exact same way. A road dog who's not going to be heavily utilized catching the ball. I don't have interest compared to the loads of pass catching running backs that we're going to get on this slate at comparable price points.
Do you have anything for Tennessee?
There's like one thing I'll list is just Delaney Walker. The last 3 seasons, he's been healthy, 346 targets across those. And it's been pretty neutral in terms of like 110 a year with Marcus Mariota. He's clearly his favorite target. The only worry there is Adam Humphries in the middle of the field can be taking some of those away. But so far, that would be the only thing I would look at the tight end position, not prioritizing it, but there's nothing really on Tennessee that I really want to be getting to all that much.
Okay. So we'll move to Jacksonville and Kansas City. This is another really appealing game for fantasy purposes. It's going to be difficult to avoid. I like this game a lot, and regardless of Jackson, the stout defense that this team has, I like both sides of it. 51.5 over under. It's the highest on this 12-game slate. Kansas City with a 27.5 total, 24 for the Jags, which, to be fair, is pretty high for the Jacksonville Jaguars. They're only 3.5 point road home dogs, and this game opened with a 5-point spread. So let's start with the Jaguars. Nick Foles, of course, at the helm. Dede Westbrook has gushed over Nick Foles all season long, thinks he's going to be the guy to get him to that 1,000 or, as he said, 1,200-yard mark. And then, of course, Leonard Fournette. We'll get to Leonard Fournette second. I want to talk about Foles and Dede Westbrook because I am coming around more and more to Westbrook at this discounted price point.
Yeah, so Nick Foles, this game in general, it's my favorite game to be stacking in GPPs. I like the Foles side of it as well, not only for GPPs, but even cash, he's fine at his price point. The weapons are actually there, and the way that they're going to kind of set up this offense is a lot more 11 personnel and a lot more throwing the ball. Even though you have Leonard Fournette there, he's going to be used as a pass catcher a good bit from what they've been saying this preseason. So I have interest in Foles. I like him. The price point completely matches it. The total matches it. And the matchup is going to be fantastic. If KC plays anything like they did last year, their defense is going to be on the field a lot. And as long as Foles in this offense can sustain drives, you have a running back that should help you do that, a very good slot receiver that should help you do that, along with some other pieces on the outside. I have a lot of interest in Nick Foles at that price point for GPPs. I really like him this week.
Yeah, so do I. The only issue I have is in terms of game stacks. If I'm playing Foles, there's Westbrook, and then we can talk about Fournette being involved in the passing game. But there's Westbrook, and then it gets ugly. Like Marquise Lee will likely be limited. Keelan Cole is Keelan Cole. I mean, technically on their depth chart right now, Chris Conley is their number 2. DJ Shark had a good summer and all, but we still haven't seen a lot from him. Like, who do you pair if you're playing Foles with 2 pass catchers? Who in the world are you pairing with him outside of D.D. Westbrook?
So I feel confident pairing Foles with Fournette and Westbrook.
That's what I'm doing as well.
Going that route, but I actually do like Conley as a GPP, sort of a dart throw at what is right now 1% ownership, but nowhere near as much as just taking what you know you're going to be getting to some extent with Fournette and Dede. But Conley did run a route on every single one of Foles' dropbacks week 3 of the preseason. And he was, I mean, it's camp and practice, but he was being raved about as the number 1 target there on the outside. He's not going to be nearly as much peppered with targets as a guy in the slot like Westbrook is. But Conley is right now with Lee going to be limited. I would expect to be one of the 2 guys on the outside, probably with Sharp for most of that game. And I expect Conley to, if not lead the team in snaps to the wide receiver position week 1, be very close to Dede. So just in terms of being on the field a lot in a very good environment, I do like that for the price point. It's going to be a lot more contrarian. But yeah, I prefer the Fournette, Dede, and then Foles and running back with somebody on the other end over the Conley one. It's just more of a way to get unique with a guy who's going to be 1% owned. And
that's where I'm at too. And I'll obviously have Conley capped pretty low. Yeah. And the reason you don't need a lot of Chris Conley if you were going to play him.
But that 1%.
Yeah, right. I really don't have an issue, as you just pointed out, with Westbrook and Fournette. And this speaks to what we opened the show with today. You can pair a running back with your quarterback, but just make sure there's a positive correlation there, right? Like, you don't want to be pairing Nick Foles, or I'm sorry, you don't want to be pairing, say, Marcus Mariota, not that you'd want to play him anyway, with Derrick Henry. There are plenty of spots in this league where guys don't get that passing down work, and then really you're just hoping the 2 of them do well individually, and all they're going to do is siphon they're going to cannibalize each other's production. So with Fournette, I think he will be involved. I think he has to be involved as a pass catcher, Sal. That's more like it.
Yep, I agree.
What are your thoughts on Kansas City? Patrick Mahomes. You've got Tyreek Hill, Sammy Watkins, Travis Kelce. We can talk about McCall Hardman, Demarcus Robinson. I mean, those ones are a little bit more cloudy in terms of roles they're going to play in week 1. But right now, Patrick Mahomes' ownership is really not coming in all that high. And I think this is one spot that I'm likely going to exploit if he stays below 10%.
Yeah, I agree. I was kind of waiting and seeing what the ownership is going to turn into. And right now, I mean, in cash, he's fantastic. In tournaments, he's fantastic. I actually have more interest in like a full stack of the Jacksonville side and running it back with pieces of Kansas City, but I have no problem getting to Mahomes. I'm going to be getting to a good amount. In terms of his pass catchers, Kelsey's the one that stands out. The ownership is following it. But last year, Kelsey was fine against Jacksonville, and it's going to get even better this year. Telvin Smith's not there anymore, the only guy who could even think about as a linebacker guarding Kelsey out there for Jacksonville. So I have a lot of confidence in Kelsey as the main guy to sort of run it back with or just get to in general. I don't have much interest in Tyreek this week. He was kind of held down a little bit or pretty well by Jalen Ramsey last year, but it wasn't just Ramsey. They had a safety help over him. And then for a good amount of the game, probably about a third of the game on offense, they actually had like 2 guys shadowing Tyreek Hill. With Jalen covering him, they would have a safety over the top in any 2-man they were running. And then they would keep a safety in the middle of the field for Tyreek Hill. So I'm not going to get much interest there because I imagine they kind of exploit it the same way. Really coming in on Kelsey. And then Sammy Watkins is a guy who in season longs, for some reason, as a number 2 wide receiver on this team, de facto maybe number 3 with Kelsey, dropped so much in drafts. But for this week, if they're going to give that much attention to Tyreek on one end of the field, the other end is going to be a lot of one-on-one matchups for Sammy Watkins, which seems like a spot that I'm going to be getting to, if not in stacks and one-off situations, a lot.
Yeah, I wasn't very high on Watkins heading into the season for seasonal purposes. One of those being that prior to the Tyreek Hill news, Watkins was being drafted way too early. His ADP slid down a bit to where I think you could justify it. But on a day like this, I'm 100% willing to play Watkins, Tyreek Hill. And look, let's be fair. Tyreek Hill's matchup isn't exactly pristine, but he's proven that he can beat anybody. You can't single cover someone like Tyreek Hill. It will not work. And I think one things too is with the amount of defensive attention that will go towards Tyreek Hill every day, it's going to open things up for Watkins and probably Kelsey too.
Yep, I agree.
The backfield is muddled, man. It's a mess right now. And, if I'm playing, 150 lineups, I would imagine I'll still have, pieces of Damian Williams based on running it back in stacks or having him potentially paired with Mahomes as a pass catcher. But I'm not confident in that right now. Andy Reid has always loved LaShawn McCoy. He indicated that McCoy will be available. I don't know. My guess is that McCoy probably doesn't get a lot of work in week 1, but man, it is so difficult to try and project what this backfield workload and what the usage is going to look like, especially in week 1 when we haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, especially in week 1, we haven't seen it. And also just, what you're getting in a lot of other situations. I have it right now for 12 carries for Damian Williams. And this is just personal projection, 8 for McCoy, and then sprinkling like 3 of a Darwin Thompson. And that's where I have it right now. At that spot, I don't have really any interest in getting to it on this sort of slate. Even in a game stack, I don't think you have to kind of force that in. I'm just staying away from the whole backfield until, like you said, we see more of what's happening there. And for the main part of the season or majority of the season, I think it's just going to be an issue because I don't know how it's not going to be when you pay a guy in Damian Williams and then you pay a guy in LaShawn McCoy.
Yeah, it's ugly. When Kareem Hunt went down last year or was suspended last year, released, and Spencer Ware went down after week 14, the final 3 weeks of the season, Damian Williams' snap count was 73%, 64%, and 52%. I have a very tough time believing that Williams sees 70% of offensive snaps this week.
Agreed. Yeah, I don't either. I don't believe that's going to be the case.
Me neither. So, you just broke it down, but do you feel confident in anything here?
In the backfield? No, I'm not going to be getting into the backfield in Kansas City.
Yeah, I don't think I will either. I might have sprinkled shares of Damian Williams just because this offense is so potent, but it isn't the best matchup on the ground either. It's actually a very difficult one, which, only adds to my concern. Let's keep it go. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was going to say the only thing is Williams, like you saw in the preseason, the linebackers, if anything, are the weak point of Jacksonville, and any sort of wheel route, it's probably Williams, who's 5 years younger than McCoy, would be the one to kind of take something to the house. But you could say that about almost every single pass-catching running back on this slate.
Right. Miami and Baltimore. I don't imagine we'll spend a ton of time here, but let's do it. You don't see a lot of naked running back or naked quarterback. You don't see it that often anymore. It will happen, but the reason you don't see it a whole lot is because we know stacking is winning the Millie Makers and winning these huge contests. Every week, no, but a lot of the weeks, that's what you see. If there is a quarterback that you're going to run without any of his pass catchers, it would be Lamar Jackson. We'll talk about Josh Allen shortly. Do you like Josh Allen in a game that is not projected to have a whole lot of scoring, and it shouldn't? Right now, 38.5 total, 22.5 implied total for Baltimore, 16 for the Miami Dolphins. That is the lowest on the slate. Ravens 6.5 point favorites on the road. What are your thoughts on Lamar Jackson? And feel free to segue into Mark Ingram as well.
Yeah, so I actually literally have in my notes here, but I'm going to say it anyways. I said the only interest mainly that I have here is naked Lamar Jackson is all I want here, and then I have yikes in parentheses. Please don't say that. So I said anyways. But, yeah, he's the only thing I'm going to get to. The wide receivers are irrelevant for the most part. After he took over last year, they were all pushing like wide receiver 100 for the second half of the year, so nothing there. I would run him naked if anything. Mark Ingram is fine, and this team ran the most plays last year at 70.2, or top 2 in most plays last year at 70.2 because they ran so much and they were effective at it, so they kept moving the chains, and they were just picking up 3 downs and 3 rushes every single time for the most part. So they're going to run a lot of plays. Mark Ingram is going to have a high floor because of that, but they're going to get involved with Gus Edwards, Justice Hill to an extent. I do think the amount of plays they're going to run is going to make Ingram okay to play in GPPs. Borderline cash play, probably don't get there. But my only interest really here is Jackson. There's going to be so many plays. I don't buy the fact that they said, or he said personally, they're not going to run as much this year. He's improved apparently on the offseason and throwing the ball. And I think it's easy to, after you have a whole offseason to build, just kind of get implemented into the offense. But yeah, Jackson's really all I have interest in here. Ingram, borderline cash, and you can have him in GPP, but I'll have low exposure. And I'm not playing like 150 maxes this week. I'll probably be playing just mainly personally the type of player I am is cash and 20 maxes, 3 max and single entries. So I'll probably have very little, if any, Mark Ingram. The only reason I'll have him is because they're going to run so many plays.
Yeah, and important to point out, according to Pro Football Focus, Baltimore has the 4th best run blocking advantage of any team on the week. Not just of any team on the slate, but of any team on the entire week.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, their pass blocking advantage, however, is not an advantage at all. It's actually the 6th lowest, and among teams on this slate, it is the 5th lowest. So I think it's worth keeping in mind that Lamar Jackson, if he gets the job done, it'll probably be on the ground. And look, this is just one stat, but we know that they're going to run the football. Even if they want to throw more, this isn't – look, Miami's pass defense isn't a total pushover. You know, they actually have some quality players. So it'll be interesting to see what happens here. I think the job gets done on the ground. And with these rushing quarterbacks, if you get into the end zone and you rush for 100 yards, I mean, that's just massive.
Yep.
Do you like anything as far as pass catchers go? Any interest in say, Mark Andrews, anything?
No, I don't have any interest in Andrews. I'm actually very bearish and low on him. He never eclipsed 50% of the snaps last year. I don't believe in any of the games. In the preseason, he saw 55% of the snaps when the starters were on the field. But it's just not enough for me to want to get there. There's just not as much opportunity as other guys will get. He was very athletic. He is a good tight end, but for fantasy purposes, I need way more opportunity. That's the biggest thing when you're talking about pass catchers, is just how many opportunities in terms of snaps and targets. I don't think there's going to be enough just due to the snaps being low.
Neither do I. You know, I talked to you about Albert Wilson on Tuesday. And
yes.
Yesterday's show, I decided to look some things up and came across some really interesting stuff. So Albert Wilson only played 7 games last year. I'm going to repeat it for anyone that missed yesterday's show as we segue to the Dolphins here. Yards after catch per reception. Dante Pettis and DJ Moore were second in the league with 7.9. Albert Wilson was first with 13.3, right? Yeah. And granted, he had a couple plays where he broke away, but those count. Now, what I find equally interesting, maybe even more, is avoided tackles. This is on Pro Football Focus. You look at avoided tackles. Albert Wilson had the 9th most avoided tackles in the league, not avoided tackles per snap, or avoided tackles the 9th most in the league, and he only played 7 games. So, I mean, that's crazy. If there's one element of this Dolphins team that I could make an argument for, it's a cheap Albert Wilson, not because I think he's awesome, not because I have faith in this offensive line, which I don't, but when your offensive line is so bad and you need a quick release and you don't trust Mike Gesicki, there may be quite a bit of plays designed for Albert Wilson to get him the ball in the flat, bubble screens, whatever, and just let him do what he can with the football. I think it's an interesting discussion, at least, for a guy that last year proved that he's very capable of having that elusive nature to him.
Yeah, he's like so I have 2 guys written down from Miami here, and he's the main one that I would get to, if anything. I'm going to be playing in the slot, only behind Tyler Lockett last year. And you kind of touched on it. Fantasy points per target, 2.77, Lockett 3.13, only behind him. So he's very efficient with the looks that he's getting. Only saw 5 targets per game, but I imagine that goes up now as he's going to be the main slot receiver. And Fitzpatrick, just in his career, has, like many quarterbacks do, enjoyed throwing to the slot. Last year, you think of Adam Humphries, who not comparable directly to Albert Wilson, but a guy who can run intermediate to long routes out of the slot like Humphries was doing last year for an extent with Fitzmagic. And yeah, I have interest in Albert Wilson. It's just the matchup is so brutal. Moving forward, I hope the price point stays this low, because if it is a beneficial to just average matchup instead of a bad one, or average to bad, I'll have more interest. But yeah, it's hard to ignore how effective this guy was at, like you were saying, just shedding tackles, and on a per target basis, how good he was in fantasy for when he was out there.
Absolutely, man. So being that he's going to come in at virtually very little ownership, I think it's like 4 or 5%. Let me see. No, sorry, 3.6% on Fanduel, and on Draftkings, Albert Wilson is getting around 5%. I'm not opposed to having some shares of Albert Wilson, because if they're going to move this football, they're going to have a tough time doing it on the ground. And I just think Fitzpatrick's going to need to get rid of the ball very quickly to make anything happen here. Why not give it to a guy that can, create yards and is good in space? Pretty much just put the ball in his hands and let him do his thing.
Yeah, he should see targets. The only concern is that Baltimore is going to run a ton of plays, not as much snaps on offense for Miami, and the rest of Miami's offense against Baltimore just doesn't match up that well. So if they have just stalled drives, it can start to become a worry for his overall just
no question. And that's, and really that's the only reason I have any interest in him at all, is because he's the only guy on that team where I see him being able to, break off a single reception for, 60 yards. It's a reach, of course, but he can at least do it. And we've seen him do it several times in the past.
Yep, at no ownership. So yeah.
At no ownership. Yeah. Minnesota and Atlanta. Minnesota right now, they're just looking at like aggregate ownership, is going to be the chalkiest team on this slate. Right. And it's not a huge surprise. Dalvin Cook right now is looking like he's going to be very popular on DraftKings. Dalvin Cook getting, let's see, where is he? I think 20% right? Yeah, the highest projected owned player overall, 25.3%. Adam Thielen coming in at 16%. Stefan Diggs coming in at 12%. Kirk Cousins coming in at 8%. So not all of them are super high, but man, this is right now a football team that is going to have some ownership, particularly with Dalvin Cook, Adam Thielen, and to a lesser extent, Stefan Diggs.
Yeah, okay. So Cook is the guy that I completely agree with the ownership. A guy that is going to be in a good matchup, more than likely a 3-down back. There's talk of the rookie Madison getting some of the Murray role as the season goes on, but I'm not too worried about that week one. And a great matchup overall, a very high total at 26. A 4-point favorite this team is at home. So I have interest in Cook, and he's cheap. So if you're going to eat the chalk anywhere in GPPs, and it's okay to, you should be doing that because there's a reason these guys are chalky. A cheaper running back, it makes sense to. So I agree with the ownership. I'm fine with it. I'm not going to be fading or getting away from any of Cook personally, but I'm pretty bearish on the Minnesota passing game. So we have to see what happens with Diggs dealing with a hamstring injury. That's going to make this change a lot.
How much of this is due to coach speak that we've heard they want to run the football a lot this year?
So part of it's due to that. Part of it's due to last year's second half. And really when Cook came back, you saw 13 less pass attempts per game for Cousins. But also Thielen's going to move to the outside, which he was still fine on the outside, much more effective in the slot. Chad Beebe is going to be a primary slot receiver this year for them. You'll see Thielen there, but not nearly as much. And it's going to come down to, look, these guys are fine. Like in cash, yeah, Thielen makes for a good play. If you have a healthy Diggs, who Diggs, when he deals with injuries, has been one of the more atrocious guys at kind of getting through injuries in his career and really just the last 2 to 3 years. So due to like ownership and just due to other spots where I can stack, I have a lot of interest in Cook, but I probably don't get to much of the Diggs and Thielen side of this in tournaments, at least that the field is getting to. But that's just my stance on it, really. Yeah, I guess some of it is due to that coach speak side, and then some of it is just due to what we saw last year, them trying to turn Kirk more into a game manager. Not sure I believe it too much, but the signs were there for like the last 6 weeks of the season, last 5 to 6.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree. It's hard to believe Kirk Cousins is going to throw another 600 attempts this year, too. Dalvin Cook ownership totally makes sense, though. You're right. What are your overall thoughts, though, on the secondary for Atlanta?
So it like has to improve from last year, but it's still bad.
Right. That's where I'm at as well.
Yeah, like it has to get better, but that doesn't mean it's going to be an average to good secondary, especially week one. So yeah, it's a good opportunity overall. I'm getting to Thielen and Cash games as of right now, just the lineups that I'm trying to build out there for double ups. But yeah, as of right now, I'm probably less high on this team than the field outside of a Dalvin Cook.
What are your thoughts on Atlanta on the opposite side of this game? We're certainly going to see a lot of game stacks here. There really is no doubt about that. Julio Jones is one player that I was getting quite a bit of early ownership on. Look, not because the matchup is perfect, but because he's just phenomenal. Now his ownership is going to be up there. As a matter of fact, right now at the wide receiver position, he's got the second highest ownership on Draftkings and on Fanduel as well at 19.4%. You've also got Calvin Ridley. And of course, we can talk Matt Ryan here, add him into the mix with these pass catchers. Austin Hooper is another guy who year over year has improved. The touchdowns, however, have been pretty stagnant, but yardage, receptions, targets, snaps, all of them have been improved year over year. He's going into his fourth season. How are you breaking down the Atlanta Falcons against a very popular Minnesota Vikings team?
Yeah, I was in the same spot as you in thinking that Julio just wasn't going to have ownership.
Yeah, I did too.
Yeah, Vikings matchup. He's the expensive receiver. So I still have interest in Julio, but seeing the ownership coming up is a little bit not concerning, but I guess not as great for what I was thinking was going to happen. I mean, Xavier Rhodes will be on Julio for probably the entire game for the most part of it. He's not great. He was outside the top 100 in PFF last year. Another year on him. This Atlanta team somehow is going to play 13 out of 16 of their games in a dome. So just overall for Matt Ryan in this offense, it should be better. Efficiency and just points per game goes up by about 4.5 points when they're in a dome. So I have interest in Ryan. I have interest in Julio. I have a lot of interest actually in Austin Hooper at his price point. Last year, he averaged 5.5 targets, and it's mainly because of his price point. And if you're not paying up for tight end, there's a couple of value tight ends. He's one of them. He had 5.5 targets per game last year, and he had over an 80% catch percentage. So he was catching 4 balls a game for a PPR format of DraftKings at 3,200, I believe it is. That's pretty good for a tight end if you're just going off of last year's averages. And again, another year to kind of step forward. Calvin Ridley, though, is probably the guy that on the year where he was getting drafted in season longs, not as much interest, but he's in a prime spot right now. He's probably going to be getting Trey Waynes, who is just absolute dust. And he's going to be coming in, especially because Julio on the same team is now highly owned. I didn't let me see. Do you have Calvin Ridley's ownership? Because I imagine it's going to be below 10% if the same guy on his team is Julio has.
Right now, and again, disclaimer, a lot of this will change. It's not like he's going to jump 100 or 15%, but much of this will change leading up to lock on Sunday. Calvin Ridley, 2.7% on FanDuel, and on DraftKings at 5,100, 4.3%. So very, very little ownership here compared to Julio Jones. Austin Hooper is at a comparable 3.4% on DraftKings and on FanDuel at 2.9.
Yeah, so I really like the Calvin Ridley spot. If you're not going to stack this game overall, then just getting to Ridley as a one-off makes sense. Ridley and Hooper would be the guys that I have the most interest in. Still have interest in Julio, just not as much. Now I want to see what these final or the updated ownership is going to be looking like. In the backfield for Devonta Freeman, hopefully he stays healthy so I can play him in other weeks. But right now for this week, I don't have much interest relative to other running backs, just all the value that you have. Nothing stands out for this matchup for me for Devonta Freeman.
Yeah, me neither. Do you think that Freeman will see all of the work, though? You say they're playing from behind, or say you've got third downs here. Is there any inkling of whether or not Ito Smith will be involved?
I don't think so. So the preseason was kind of the time for that to be established if somebody was going to push Freeman now that Coleman was out of there. And if anything, Brian Hill almost pushed Ito out of a backup job. Yeah. It wasn't that close, but it was being talked about. So I think those guys are a tier below. As long as Freeman is healthy, which is a big if for his career as of right now, it's going to be just kind of him back there.
All right. Anything else from this one on either side? It is a very popular game. I don't want to miss anything.
So the only other thing, maybe not right away week one, but Irv Smith Jr. is a backup tight end, a rookie tight end for the Minnesota Vikings. They have stated that they want to get him involved, and he can play all over the field. It doesn't just have to be on the line. He can be in the backfield as a fullback. He can be out wide. So maybe not right now week one, but keep an eye on Irv Smith Jr., very talented tight end that they were utilizing a lot in camp and preseason.
Okay. Buffalo, New York Jets. Again, probably won't spend a ton of time here. But I want to start with the New York Jets in this game. Not likely to see the most scoring on either side. There are some interesting aspects of it, though. 40.5 total. It's come up from 38.5. Jets with a 21.7 implied total, 18.7 for the Bills. Jets are 3-point favorites at home. Let me ask you, just get it out of the way early. Do you have any interest in Darnold?
No, I don't have any interest in Darnold this week.
What about Le'Veon Bell in a clear workhorse role where his price point's kind of in no man's land, below those top tier guys and above those really solid mid-range running backs, which makes it a little bit more difficult to get to someone like Bell?
Yeah, so Bell, I mean, the biggest thing for me is seeing 20 months removed from football what he looks like, but he's going to get all the work. There's hype around Ty Montgomery being utilized, and I actually kind of buy that hype a little bit. But you don't have this huge acquisition in Le'Veon Bell to let the guy that you just draft as a free agent kind of take over or get really any huge amount of work. So at least for week one, I have to see what the Ty Montgomery hype's about. I do have interest in Bell for contrarian reasons, but right now, Todd Gurley would be the guy I get to just more in that kind of aspect of which running back in the 7K range is kind of that contrarian pivot. For me, it would be Todd Gurley, but Bell is interesting because, yeah, he's going to be a 3-down back. The guy says he wants 50 touches a game, and there's a really good chance that in this sort of matchup, he sees 25 touches from the ground in the air. The only concern is that Buffalo is a really stout defense just up front, and it's going to be in a very awful just game environment in terms of pace. Lots of inefficient drives is what I'm imagining. I think this offense has a lot of potential, but week one, they kind of just drew the worst possible situation against Buffalo.
Yeah, they really did. It's tough for me to really find any, maybe I have tepid interest. No, you know what? I don't. I was going to say, like Robbie Anderson, Jamison Crowder, there will be weeks where I could see myself playing quite a bit of New York Jets, whether it feels great or not. This one doesn't feel like the week for me. Do you have any interest in the pass catchers?
Now, the only thing I wrote down was Crowder would be my only interest, but if I'm playing like 20 maxes, I'm not getting to him. Gaze likes the slot wide receivers because you just look at Jarvis Landry, who he built. Sam Darnold likes slot receivers. Quincy Enunwa and Curse were peppered with targets when they were both in the slot last year. Juju in college. But for week one, it's not a spot in this matchup that I think that you have to get to in any huge situation, and definitely not in cash, even though they'll see targets, not this week.
What about anything from Buffalo, starting with this backfield? They just cut LaShawn McCoy. Devin Singletary certainly gaining quite a bit of hype. You know that Singletary is going to play a big role in this offense, but how involved will Frank Gore be? And what type of workload, if any, will TJ Yeldon see? Will he be a third down guy? Will he siphon off a lot of that third down work? These are questions yet to be answered, Sal.
Yeah, they're yet to be answered, and speculation is just that you're going to have Singletary. If anybody breaks free in terms of touches, it would be Singletary. Big reason why they let McCoy go. Definitely the money aspect of it, but also they just felt confident in Singletary. Frank Gore, though, he's going to be there. He's going to be getting probably goal line touches, short downage touches, and then you have Yeldon, who did catch 85 balls the last 2 years. Overall, the price point's the only reason that you get like value out of a Devin Singletary because he doesn't have to do much at 3,600 if he sees 10, 12 touches. I just have to wait and see personally. I think it's fine for GPPs, but I'm probably not getting there in this backfield. It's a mess when there's three guys who are going to be potentially seeing 5 to 6 plus touches each.
It is a big mess. And it's not like I'm in love with the matchup. And I guess you could make an argument that this game stays relatively competitive, divisional game between two offenses that are unproven. Like, could Singletary get some work? Sure. And he's not expensive. So, look, I probably will have some Devin Singletary based solely on that price point. It's in terms of opportunity cost. If Singletary does come out there and get double-digit touches, and a couple goal line looks, then it could certainly be worth it. And you don't need a ton from him in order to make it worthwhile. What about Josh Allen? And really, God, when you talk about wide receiver core that's just flat out ugly to try and decide who you want in your pool, who you want in your groups. Dude, Zay Jones, John Brown, Robert Foster. Like, what do you, Cole Beasley? What do you do with this team?
Yeah, so actually I have interest, very small interest, but playing a couple of stacks in terms of Buffalo this week against the Jets. The Jets last year were terrible against wide receivers. I don't expect that to change. Tremaine Johnson, at this point to me, Last year he was terrible. He's dealing with an injury this year. I actually like sort of a stack of like a Josh Allen and a guy who throws deep in terms of ADOT was the highest in the league last year, how deep each average pass was.
Yep.
You have John Brown, who's just living on that, sort of like the Deshaun Jackson, lives on the deep ball. So for GPPs, I have interest slightly in John Brown. Beasley in the slot is a guy who is actually really efficient around the red zone in his career. But overall, just a slot wide receiver who I expect to see somewhere in the range of 4 to 6 targets. It's not high upside, but last year the Jets, and they didn't really do much to change this in terms of cornerbacks. They gave up 45.9 fantasy points to the wide receiver per game, which was third highest in the league. I have some slight interest there, but it's nothing in terms of a priority. I just do like, and then you also get the scrambling ability of Josh Allen. You'll have interceptions, you'll have mistakes, but that doesn't really matter too much for DraftKings. They're not going to be pulling Josh Allen in this game.
Yeah. Similar to Albert Wilson, where, it's not a high octane offense, low implied total. Maybe he can break one at a discount. I think John Brown, similarly, even if this game is low scoring, John Brown has the ability to break off a long touchdown. As you mentioned, Josh Allen had no hesitation throwing deep last year. And if you want to know how reliant John Brown is on that, look what happened once Joe Flacco went down and Lamar Jackson came in. His production was almost entirely erased off the map because Lamar Jackson could not hit him deep. So, I think the attempts will at least be there with Josh Allen. And if there was someone I would pair him with, it would be John Brown.
Agreed, definitely.
Philadelphia, Washington, Eagles, big home favorites here. Evidently, so there's no reason they shouldn't be there. They've moved to 10 points now, 45-point total. They have a 27.5 implied total, 17.5 for the Washington Redskins. As a matter of fact, they're tied now. The Eagles are tied with the Chiefs for the highest implied total on this slate. You have Carson Wentz. You have Alshon Jeffrey. Deshaun Jackson, broken finger, but he should be there. He's been practicing in full. Zach Ertz. We will talk about the running back situation in a moment, but thoughts on Carson Wentz and a pairing with some of these pass catchers from the Eagles on a day where they have the highest implied total on the slate?
Yeah, tied for the highest now. Carson Wentz, way too cheap in terms of cash, even in tournaments. Going to be getting to a lot of Wentz. I guess for me right now is something I'm still working through is, like you said, so many weapons on this team. Who do you rely on? Ertz is the guy who stands out as the guy that you would rely on the most. Just an absolute monster around the red zone and really all over the field, averaging like 10 targets a game last year. But Landon Collins, now being on Washington, this is a guy who was actually limited while he was playing him twice a year with the Giants. He actually limited and held his own against Zach Ertz, and they did a lot of man-to-man coverage or just spying in a way with Collins on Ertz. So I still have interest in Ertz in a combination, but I'm just kind of struggling right now trying to pick out where to go. Jeffrey, another big body wide receiver. Not too concerned right now about J-Jaw, the rookie, pushing him, but he'll be the fourth wide receiver getting snaps. And Jeffrey only 200-yard games and 34 starts. For the Eagles, this is a very good spot overall. Just in terms of when it comes to stacking, it sounds good to kind of get an Ertz, Jeffrey, and Wentz stack on one side of it, but I'm not too sure how much I trust it. The points are going to go somewhere. It's just a matter of there's so many weapons when you have factored in Goddard, Nelson Aguilar, Miles Sanders, and Jordan Howard in the backfield. Right now, I really like Wentz, and it's just a matter of where I'm coming down to on the targets. Ertz is the guy who stands out. And then after that, it's trying to have another stack option. I'm personally struggling right now picking apart what else is out there. And I guess that's something I could ask you. Are you an Eagles fan?
Yeah, you better believe it, fella.
So I guess for you is what I would ask is where do you think, at least to start the year, Ertz is going to be the main priority, but at least for in this matchup, stacking, it seems like Ertz and Jeffrey seems like the way to go, but this is the spot where I'm probably having the most struggle looking at the offense because it's a great overall total and environment against Washington. It's a matter of what else do all those pieces do because there's so many of them.
There are a lot of them. Although I said this yesterday when discussing something similar with Spags, there are a lot of them, yes. However, they also have the highest implied total on the slate. So they are expected to score a lot of points. And when that's the case, I'm not as worried about it. Of course, we're not going to see all four of these notable pass catchers break out for huge games, but it's not impossible. It's not even improbable that several of them have solid games in the event that they do put up ridiculous point totals as we have as Vegas has projected. So I'm not opposed to mixing it in, and instead of me just looking at it like, all right, Alshon and Ertz. Now, if you're playing like 3 max or single entry, yeah, it'd probably be Alshon and Ertz. But I want to try and mix in Djax quite a bit with them, with Alshon and with Ertz. Those 3 would be the primary targets for me. Again, a 28 implied total, or 25.5 is a lot of points, specifically on this slate where they're tied with the Chiefs. And honestly, I'll probably have a little bit of Miles Sanders there too. Tournaments only, but a couple of reasons for this is we know that Jordan Howard, even if he does get a decent amount of work, he's not going to be involved as a pass catcher. At least I would really doubt it. Miles Sanders on DraftKings right now, coming in with ownership of, where's he at? 2%. If you're looking to be different when it comes to the Philadelphia Eagles, it's not going to be hard because Alshon and Ertz are, specifically Alshon is already going to be pretty low owned. I don't think it's crazy to give Deshaun Jackson and Miles Sanders looks, but really if you're playing 150, I just want to mix them all into lineup, Sal, because they should score a lot of points.
Yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, the DJ call is fantastic because he's just going to overall increase Wentz efficiency, deep ball, and everything. And yeah, it seems like what I was reading this morning, the finger is not going to be an issue anymore, but people are still going to think it is. So that's another spot to gain leverage.
Yeah, and keep in mind too that they've been looking for this for a while now. They tried Torrey Smith, it didn't work. Mike Wallace got hurt after week 1. It didn't work. Someone really capable of stretching and opening up the field like Deshaun Jackson should make a really, really big impact on this offense. And also their run game was just pitiful last year. They cut their 2 top running backs from last season. So assuming that's better, I expect them to they ran the ball 30 times a game in 2017, 24 times per game in 2018. That wasn't by design. That was because they played with the lead more in 2017, and they actually had an efficient run game. Last season, they had neither of those for most of the season. In week 1, I expect that to be the case, meaning I'm not looking at last season's rush totals per game with the Eagles. I'm assuming the run game is going to be better. I wouldn't be surprised if they got up to 28 to 30 carries today or on Sunday, which is why I have some tepid interest in a guy like Miles Sanders. So.
Yeah, I like that call. That makes sense. And yeah, the total is just too good to ignore. Not concerned with where production overall is. It's just a matter of exactly which 2 to 3 guys are going to encompass it. But yeah, in terms of playing 150, you can get shares of all of that, which is great.
What are your thoughts on this Washington team?
So for Washington, and I think it's not much. Yeah, it's not much. I have no real interest in Washington players. Reed's still in the concussion protocol. I don't know if he's been officially ruled out yet. The guy's had 7 reported concussions since he's been an NFL player, and you could estimate like almost double that for a guy like that haven't been reported. That's scary, but there's really nobody. If you force me to say somebody, if Trey Quinn's going to play in the slot, but really I'm not going to get to much here at all. The backfield's pretty much a mess with guys in AP back there, and even Chris Thompson's going to get work and probably a decent amount of work. The wide receiver unit, not much. Paul Richardson, and then a bunch of rookies and Quinn. Yeah, I'm not getting much here.
Neither am I. If I was going to run it back with someone, honestly, I would just throw like all of I would just throw the top 3 receivers and Jordan Reed into the pool and see what it gives me, because I would let the projections do the work there. I really don't have a lot of interest. And quite frankly, if there were a few teams on Cruncher where I'd make an exception, like, must play one wide receiver, tight end, running back from the opposite team with opposing quarterback, and then you can exclude a team, there's a good chance that I might exclude Washington. I just have very little confidence in them. Any interest in the run game at all?
No, it's just a brutal spot with 3 guys back there who are going to get touches. I don't have any interest, and they're probably going to be down pretty big in this one.
Yeah, I'm with you. All right. Chargers, Colts, kind of an interesting spot. You and I discussed how we think Frank Reich can at least get Jacoby Brissett to a point where he's serviceable. And I think one of the big benefits here, it's not like Andrew Luck was practicing up until a week ago and then he retired. Jacoby Brissett has been practicing with the first team offense. A very different offense, different coaching from 2 years ago. But Brissett at least has this experience over the summer, in the preseason, at training camp, which in my opinion plays a very big role in how this team will perform. The Chargers have a 25.5 total. They are 6.5 point favorites at home, 44.5 over under. What are your thoughts on Phillip Rivers and Mike Williams and Keenan Allen and Austin Eckler and Hunter Henry? There's a lot of mouths to feed here.
Yeah. So for the Chargers side, I have interest, probably not so much in terms of stacking the team, but just one-offs and a couple of players from it. So in terms of pass catchers, yeah, Eckler is going to be high owned like we're seeing right now. And he's probably one of the running backs that have that ownership that I don't agree with the most. It already came out and it was already known earlier today that he's going to share work with Justin Jackson. It's been known, so they're just kind of reaffirming that for everybody. But probably 65, 70 at most % of the load for Eckler. And compared to the other guys going around him in price range and upside, there's going to be 80 to 85% of the work through them. Now, it's good about opportunity to kind of look at those things, but this is a really good spot overall for guys who are going to be catching short passes like Eckler, Keenan Allen, Hunter Henry, because the Chargers offensive line is not great. Even against Indianapolis, they're going to see pressure. And you factor in that Indiana last year ran a zone defense that funneled to running backs, funneled to slot receivers and tight ends. So I don't like the ownership and how high it is on Eckler just because I like other spots more. It's still a great spot for him, but just comparing a guy who's going to get 65% of the run with Justin Jackson being back there, maybe even a 60-40 split, I have the most interest in Keenan Allen. I completely disagree with the ownership level he's coming in at now. I get it. He's in that weird price range of the mid 7K. People go barbell with cheap wide receivers and then expensive guys. That's what we're seeing. But right now coming in, too low ownership. He's going to pick up a lot of the Tyrell Williams slot routes and snaps that he's leaving behind. The guy ran about 35-40% of his routes out of the slot in Tyrell last year. Much more efficient spot for an elite receiver and Allen to be in against a defense that's going to funnel to them. And then you had Hunter Henry, who before he got injured was one of the better receivers or one of the better tight ends in the league in terms of efficiency, fantasy points per target. He's also going to benefit from facing a team that's going to funnel to the middle of the field in short passes. So a lot of interest for me in Keenan Allen at lower ownership. Hunter Henry coming in as a value tight end with ownership makes a lot of sense to me. I agree with the ownership there. Keenan Allen or Austin Eckler would be the one that I kind of look at and pause, and I'm kind of happy that I'm already underweight on it. And I guess, what are your thoughts on that situation with Eckler? Because it seems like the one that's standing out as, to me at least, somewhere where I don't agree with the ownership as much.
I think it's crazy. You're saying you think it's too high, right?
Yeah, I think it's well too high.
I think it's crazy. Yeah. A couple of things. Number one, Austin Eckler's a fine little player, as they say, right? Like he can get the job done, but not on his own. And I don't think Justin Jackson's just going to fall to the back burner and not get any involvement here. As a matter of fact, I think he'll be pretty involved on the ground. And you still got Hunter Henry. You still have Mike Williams. You still have Keenan Allen. Do I think that they're going to run the ball quite a bit with Jacoby Brissett at the helm coming back the other way? Yeah, of course I do. But this type of ownership on Eckler is surprising for one specific reason outside of everything I just mentioned. He's not that cheap, Sal. Like, we're not paying pre-Melvin Gordon holdout salary for Austin Eckler, right? They preemptively priced this guy up. So at $5,500 on DraftKings, what are you really getting that much value? And then factor in the 23% ownership. Again, this could change. This is all subject to change. But if it finishes, if the slate locks where Eckler is right now, I will hopefully be very underweight.
Yeah, I'm really surprised that, and like you said, we'll see changes to this, but Chris Carson, same price range, Leonard Fournette, these guys, even Nick Chubb coming in below him, it's really surprising to me. So I completely agree. And then you also take into account he's going to be in a good pass catching spot, but yeah, he's not going to have as much usage overall. And in terms of running the ball, this Chargers O-line is a big concern. It's not like it's a guarantee that he's going to be gashing up the Colts.
Right. I'm with you. Okay, so rank Hunter Henry among tight ends for you in terms of preference.
So in terms of preference right now for point per dollar reasons, Hunter Henry comes in at number 1. So top of the list.
Okay. Beautiful. Yeah. And I get it. And honestly, I understand the ownership here. There are some concerns, just that he hasn't played football in, over a calendar year, but go ahead and look at some of the numbers from Hunter Henry in the first 2 seasons that he played. They're outstanding, by the way. And I'm talking about like advanced metrics as well over at Pro Football Focus. And then go ahead and ask yourself what type of impact is made with no Antonio Gates on the roster. It's significant, man. Rivers, when he trusts his tight ends, will use them, and he won't use them sparingly. So I have no issues getting the Hunter Henry. And unlike, you know what though, Sal? Unlike Austin Eckler, where he's priced, I don't want to say to his ceiling, but seemingly close, Hunter Henry is under 4,000.
Yeah, that's the thing. He's so cheap, and this matchup just caters. Overall, it's going to cater to the tight end position. Last year, Indianapolis gave up the most receiving yards to the tight end position, and I'm not too sure how much that changes.
Yeah, me neither. What are your thoughts here on the other side of this one? I will point out, too, that last year, when we're talking about the Colts, last year the Chargers ranked number 1 in DVOA against opposing tight ends. So take that into consideration. Basically allowed, virtually no yards per game to the position. It was a pretty rough go for tight ends facing this team. Where do you stand on the Indianapolis Colts and basically this entire offense?
Yeah, so the Colts this week, I get it. The price point, especially for cash on Brissett, is interesting, but I'm not getting to it. The matchup, even with no Derwin James out there on IR, the safety for the Chargers, it's still tough. This is, in my opinion, probably the best trio of cornerbacks. And then you take into account that just overall, the total is not great. And you have Jacoby Brissett, who actually has a pretty good offensive line finally in Indianapolis. He's a guy who holds on to the ball a lot. Probably his biggest problem is holding on and indecisiveness. So the O-line will help that, but not enough for me to get there. The only spot that I would say is interesting is Marlon Mack, if indeed they are going to use him
I agree.
as this 3-down pass catching back, because if they are down big, he'll be game flow independent. But we have to kind of see that first. The coaches are saying he'll be the pass catching 3rd down back, but is Hines going to get on the field some? If they do get down big, then it just throws that all out the window. But if you have Mack on the field, even when they're down, that's interesting at what will be low ownership.
Second best run blocking advantage for the Colts, behind only the Philadelphia Eagles as well. So take that into consideration. I don't think it's crazy running back some Rivers stacks with Marlon Mack. It might sound like it, but I don't think it is. I mean, the Chargers would you agree the Chargers should be good against tight ends again this year?
Yes. Yeah.
Right. So a lot of those short yardage passes to tight ends might not be there. Mack might be the safety valve this week.
I agree.
Seattle, Cincinnati. Russell, I don't know how much time to spend on this because it's kind of ugly. I like Russell Wilson as a quarterback. He's efficient. He's going to throw touchdowns, but he didn't run a lot last year at all. They lost Doug Baldwin. DK Metcalf seems to be progressing slowly in terms of where he's going to find himself on the depth chart. To me, it just feels like Wilson, Lockett, and Carson, and I don't know if I could find anyone else I feel even remotely confident in. Yeah,
that's it. All I have written here is, in this order of interest, is Carson, Lockett, Wilson in this game. And yeah, that's it. We kind of stated on Tuesday everything about Carson, 3-down back, pass catching capabilities. I have him slated in for 22 carries and 5.5, so 5 to 6 targets for this game against the Bengals last year, who were just putrid against running backs, against quarterbacks, really across the board, even tight ends. So a lot of interest in Chris Carson. Tyler Lockett kind of broke out last year, going to now be probably more on the outside than people are leading to believe, with them re-signing Dron Brown again after they cut him. But yeah, still interest in Lockett because of the matchup and Carson. Less interest in Wilson. Again, the rushing upside probably due to regress, but not all at once in week 1. So yeah, that's really it. There's nothing else that I even have interest in talking about.
You're saying positive regression?
Yeah, in terms of like rushing, his red zone usage for running last year, he had 0 touchdowns and just no usage in the red zone for Russell Wilson. So yeah, positive regression from red zone standpoint.
Right. Yeah, I would agree. the other side of this game, the Bengals are huge road dogs. Awesomo's projections, though, like Joe Mixon quite a bit. I'll tell you that much. Quite a bit at low ownership. If there's one spot that concerns me, it would be this. And as much as I like Joe Mixon as a running back, this matchup, man, it's daunting.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt you. Not because I think that this is the same Legion of Boom defense as it was before, but just because game script should be very unfavorable. And look, I don't fade games because of blowouts. I think in football that can be very unhelpful, but I definitely take into consideration how much a running back is going to see the ball on the ground, especially after this Gio Bernard contract. Like, what's his involvement going to be if they play from behind after the first quarter?
Yep, that's exactly my take there. I'm like wondering what Alex knows that we don't about the Joe Mixon, because he is looking good right now in projections there. But yeah, Gio Bernard being signed, they have to get him involved somehow, even if it's just 3 to 4 more touches in the air. That's going to hurt Mixon. Huge road dogs, not a spot anyways that I want to look at. I have this projected as the second slowest pace game on the slate in terms of plays run. Yeah, not much here. You have Jadeveon Clowney coming over. Not much here that I want to get to. And also the O-line for the Bengals took a lot of hits in terms of injuries, players walking away from the team. Not a great spot overall, at least on the surface. I'm not getting to really any of Mixon, especially at the price range that he's at.
By the way, I just want to give you some breaking news here, which is huge.
Okay.
Adam Schefter just tweeted, this will be on the Monday night slate, but the next chapter, Antonio Brown and GM Mike Mayock got into it Wednesday, and the team is now planning to suspend its star receiver, league sources tell ESPN. Honestly, dude, I don't think this is him being a diva. I think there's something psychologically wrong with Antonio Brown at this point.
I'm looking at, yeah, I mean,
I'm not a psychiatrist. I don't pretend to be, but he was always a diva. He was never like this in the past. I mean, it's gotten out of control.
Oh yeah, that was literally 40 seconds ago. Wow. Yeah. Like you said, Monday night. That's crazy. This guy, every single week it's something else. This might be he might have to sign a season-long or a lifetime deal with Hard Knocks or something. It's just great TV.
It's crazy, man. Like I honestly feel bad for the guy because this isn't normal. Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Like I said, went to school for psychology. Worst decision of my life. You can see I used that degree freely for toilet paper, but outside of that, I don't really have any knowledge. But my God, what a shitty situation this is for Oakland. And the Oakland fans, by the way, Sal.
Yeah.
My God. Thoughts on the rest of this Cincy team? And someone mentioned in chat, Gio Bernard and Ketchup, for playing from behind. I think I could be on board with you there if he was minimum salary. But at 4,100, I'd rather just play Miles Sanders at 3,600 in a game where they're 10-point favorites.
Yeah, exactly. Just overall, you're going to be getting something there when maybe not even having Gio on the field in that situation. But no, I agree. Just the price point's not there. I would say the only other thing is really Tyler Boyd. I think it was his ownership, I imagine, was high. Let me see. Yeah, so overall, just Tyler Boyd would be the only guy that I have interest in there. It's going to be probably not efficient, but it doesn't matter if he's going to get 10 targets in this game because I really don't know where else they're going to go. Damian Willis starting on the other end of this at minimum salary, no real interest. It's not a spot where Cincinnati's a team that I'm going to get to outside of Tyler Boyd, some shares just due to the volume that he'll be seeing.
All right. Hey, we're doing a big giveaway. An annual NFL package valued at $249. All of the ownership and player projections that we talk about on the show, and a new tool that Alex is developing that I got a little peek at. Very exciting stuff will be coming down the pike, and what we've already got over at awesemo.com. We are doing a giveaway and giving away one NFL package, our annual NFL package, Awesemo Plus membership, $249 value. And all you have to do to be entered to win is retweet, like, and reply with our pinned tweet at awesemo_com and at awesemo NFL. and reply with the number of passing yards Aaron Rodgers throws on Thursday Night Football against the Bears. That's tonight. Just retweet, like, and reply to it with his passing yards for tonight's game, and follow awesemo_com and NFL.com. Hey, follow myself and Sal while you're at it too, at Laffy_D and Salvetri DFS. We'll pick 2 random winners from the finalists on September 6th at 12 p.m. Eastern. Just make sure you get it in before tonight's game starts. Good luck to everyone. $249 value. Hopefully you all enter, and good luck. And use the promo code NFL Strategy when you sign up. If you wanted to get an Awesemo Plus membership today, go to awesemo.com/join. We just revamped the landing page. It looks incredible. It'll give you details on every single package. So you don't have to jump in cold. You can know exactly what you're getting into. NFL Strategy will get you all the tools, everything behind paywall, depending on what package you select. And we've got some new great weekly packages for really great prices. So use that sign-up code to get 50% off your first month. That's right, 50% off your first month. NFL Strategy, all one word. All right, Sal, Arizona and Detroit. I want to start with the Lions, and I want to ask your take on Matthew Stafford, Kerryon Johnson, Kenny Golladay, because with Peterson out and Detroit being slight road favorites, I actually have some interest in this Lions team. Do you have any interest in them this week?
Yeah, I do have interest in them. The game overall, even though Arizona wants to play faster, Detroit's going to just pull that down. They want to play slow. They want to run the ball. Patricia brought in an offensive coordinator who kind of backs him on that. I think it's just a fantastic spot everywhere. Like you said, the secondary's hurt. In terms of running against them, it's going to be just slashing with Kerryon Johnson, whoever else gets touches. Overall, the offense is good. It's just a matter of how many times Stafford's actually going to throw. I have interest in Golladay. I have interest probably more so in Marvin Jones at lower ownership, who was very comparable to Golladay last year when healthy and the year before when he was just playing the whole year out there, no Golladay. But yeah, the whole offense looks pretty good to me. I focus more on Kerryon because I think they are going to run enough to, even if they take him off the field for some third downs, he'll still be very effective. And I do believe he'll be the guy getting the work around the goal line, even though there's speculation around that. The offense looks good. It's probably the best matchup in terms of an offense against a putrid defense on the slate. It's just how much are they going to let Stafford throw week one? He can do really whatever he wants. He has the weapons to do it. It's just, do you believe that he'll be throwing enough to make up for it?
I agree, yeah. I think, dude, if Kerryon Johnson's workload is as nice as I expect, I could see a decent game from him here, just given the game script, man. Yep. If he's going to be on the field quite a bit, I like it. And I would expect, from an ownership standpoint, Kerryon Johnson to come in around that 10, 12% mark. Right now he's at 13, but I don't know, 5,800 on DraftKings is pretty reasonable, Sal.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like, the only reason people are probably not getting to him more is because the Ty Johnson news of more pass catching work, Anderson, but I think there's going to be enough opportunities for him on the ground for it not to really matter. I have him at 18 carries right now, and that doesn't factor in anything in terms of what he can do in a pass catching environment.
For sure. And I think Fournette and Cook play a lot into that too, just being very similarly priced.
100%. And then Eckler is just pulling so much, I imagine.
Absolutely. What about Arizona? Is there anything you like here at all? Do you like David Johnson or Kyler Murray or Christian Kirk?
Yeah, the only thing that I would look at is David Johnson, but if you're playing him, it's because he's lower owned, and I much prefer Todd Gurley and probably even Le'Veon Bell. David Johnson's going to go up against which should be a pretty solid Lions run D. They just acquired Mike Daniels. They got Trey Flowers. So I'm probably staying away from it. The offense, this air raid for the beginning of the year, I believe they play the Ravens next week. It's going to take a little bit of time to kind of get to see what they can actually do against a defense that is not one slow paced like Detroit. Really good defense in the Ravens next week, probably going to dominate clock possession, similar to what I expect Detroit to do here. So there's interest moving forward in Arizona, but I think there's a lot of hype. It's kind of cooled down a little bit. Not much interest this week. If anything, I probably have more interest in Larry Fitz over David Johnson, as sort of just a cheaper guy who's going to be in the slot and more so reliable, because this offense isn't going to use tight ends. They cut RSJ, Seals Jones, and kind of Larry Fitz is probably going to be with David Johnson, those security blankets for Murray. So the only two things there, not much at all, and probably Larry Fitz the biggest interest out of this game, actually.
You think Chase Edmonds has as much involvement as Cliff Kingsbury's tried to make it seem that he would?
Honestly, no. I don't think so. He had started to get some like hype in the preseason, a little bit of camp, but none of that actually manifested into anything out of beat writers. So for me personally, I would say no, but at the same time, I guess we can wait and see on that front. The thing that I will say is, in terms of their wide receivers, lots of young guys, right? You have Kirk second year, Isabella, and Keyshawn Johnson. I'm the biggest on Keyshawn Johnson, especially comparable to Isabella, who had a really bad preseason.
I'm with you, man.
Yeah, Keyshawn just continued to perform well in camp, and then even in games with Kyler Murray for a whole half of preseason week 3, performed really well. So he's the guy that in some of my 12, 14 man leagues, I'm taking as like a last pick and just going to stash for 6 weeks and see what happens.
Been doing the same. Like the drafts I did over the last several weeks had a good amount of Keyshawn Johnson because, that wide receiver 3 role is wide open. Not to mention, how much does Larry Fitz have left in the tank?
Exactly.
Dallas, we got 2 to go. For all of you that are still with us, and it looks like everyone's got some stamina, Sal. We're still at the top of the numbers. Hit us with a thumbs up. Like the video if you enjoy it and you want to help support us at Awesemo. It helps us out greatly, and we really appreciate all of your support. Hit that thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you always know when content's dropping next. Dallas, New York Giants. We really already talked about Elliott, so we don't need to spend much time here. Just to kind of revisit it quickly, you do have faith that Elliott, assuming his ownership comes in as low as it's projected or close to where it is right now, could be a really great tournament play, right?
Yeah, I just don't buy the 20 to 25 snaps, and then it makes me feel better that nobody else is going to be playing him and they're scared of him because this is what I picture. I picture that they put him on the field. They say, okay, what does he look like? We're going to say 20 to 25 snaps, but if he looks good, just let him go. And I imagine he's going to look good. So I can't see them pulling him at halftime and just saying, or letting him play the whole game, but like every third drive. I can't see that happening.
I hear you, man. Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, Dak Prescott. Any interest here?
Yeah, I actually really like the overall team stack here. There's a pretty good total here. Dak, I'm very high on this year. This week, it's going to be a pretty good matchup for a defense in the Giants that lost all of their star power. You have Amari, who seems to be okay and ready to go. If that's the case, and you do believe that Zeke will play, a Dak, Amari, and Zeke type of stack, if you can afford it and find the pieces to bring it back with even in a Saquon pretty much or an Evan Ingram, it seems like a nice hammer situation where people stay away from, especially due to the Zeke low ownership. I actually really like Dallas for week 1 as a team stack. And bringing it back, you have Ingram, you have Saquon, and even a Sterling Shepard if you want to get there with options to bring it back with.
Okay. Let's get to the last one here.
Yep.
But first, Sterling Shepard, Saquon Barkley, Evan Ingram. Those are the 3 guys if we're targeting anybody. I'll never tell you not to play Saquon Barkley. Basically, what's your opinion on if you're running a Dallas stack? I love the idea of running it back with one of those 3 guys because I think the volume of targets and carries will be very heavily concentrated between the 3. It's actually one of my favorite run it back spots, even though the Giants aren't a good team.
Yeah.
In terms of stacking them fully, that's a different story with Eli Manning as your quarterback. But I do like the idea of running it back with one of those 3. What are your thoughts on the Giants?
Yeah, I probably run it back the most with Ingram, and that's really a pricing thing. I think you'll be very different stacking this game in general. I think it might be a lot trying to play both Saquon and Zeke. But, yeah, I mean, it's hard not to like Saquon. Even if the team's down 15, he's still going to be out there every snap, probably running on some of them, but also being a number 1 wide receiver on this team as a running back. Cowboys were top 5 in defending the pass catching running back last year. No OBJ. Saquon took a hit there, but that's to be expected. And it was a very small sample, so I don't think we could break down into that too much. But overall, yeah, Saquon's a fine play. I run it back the most with Ingram in that situation if you were to stack Dallas. And then very low interest in Sterling Shepard, but he should see looks. They're focusing on prioritizing Evan Ingram for this season. And I'll kind of take stabs on that before his price comes up on DraftKings.
All right. You want to close out this game-by-game breakdown with Tampa Bay, San Francisco?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it, man. Tampa Bay, San Francisco, another game that I think has a whole lot of potential. 25.5 implied total for both teams, 51 over-under. Again, one of the highest on the slate, coming in right behind the Chiefs and Jaguars, which should come as no surprise, and right above the Panthers and Rams. But look, it's a pick 'em right now, Sal. It's a pick 'em. Both teams expected to score a decent amount of points here. Starting with Tampa Bay, you've got Winston, you've got Godwin, you've got Evans, you've got O.J. Howard, and you've got a largely ineffective run game that is yet to prove anything last year or this preseason. How are you focusing on Tampa Bay right now? And in large part, it's going to be targeting all pass catchers and Winston.
Yeah, we've had like a month to just like hype this game in this offense, if not more. I think probably one of the highest owned stacks will be a Winston, Godwin, Howard situation. And with that, Mike Evans probably is still the number one receiver out there. Starts to see lower ownership. So if you're not stacking it, I think Evans is a very good, even in cash play, but more so GPPs, since you're leveraging the field there a little bit compared to Chris Godwin. But yeah, I like both sides of this in terms of stacking. You're spending a little bit more depending on how you stack Tampa Bay here, just with Winston's price tag and Mike Evans. But it's hard to get away from. Like you said, it's probably the best overall environment for stacking when you look at just situational pace from last year, how many plays were run, the overall game total right there, like you said, with KC and Jacksonville. I like it. Godwin in the slot for a lot of the time with no Humphrey this year. Jackson gone from the outside, just more overall opportunities to stay on the field for him. And in Bruce Arians' offense, you know that Larry Fitzgerald was just dynamite in it, catching 100 balls. Reggie Wayne caught 100 balls in that offense as well for a very small portion under Arians. Godwin's going to be taking over that role, at least in theory. So the hype is warranted, in my opinion. Getting to stacks here makes a lot of sense. If the ownership in terms of stacks comes in really high, you'll find other spots that are just as favorable or very close, like KC and Jacksonville. But it's hard to get away from it. O.J. Howard is fine. Godwin is more than fine. Evans as a leverage type play, I think, is maybe my favorite play from Tampa Bay. And then Winston, with all these weapons, it's hard not to like him.
I mean, I'll even throw in for tournaments 1% Brashad Perriman.
Yep. Yeah.
I don't know what his snap count will look like, but he's almost minimum salary. And because this run game has been just absolutely punchless, and I don't see that changing, if you have, 38, 40 pass attempts for Winston, Perriman doesn't need to see a 20% market share in order to be viable. So if you're looking for a dirt cheap guy, in these monster large field contests with the super top heavy payouts, don't completely sleep on Perriman, especially if the rest of this Tampa stack's going to be really popular.
Yeah, and Tampa's secondary was terrible last year, but San Fran ranked bottom 5 in DVOA against pass, so they were just as bad in terms of being bottom of the league.
Exactly, and that's a lot of reason why this game's getting some love. Yep. What type of interest do you have in San Francisco? And George Kittle popped up in a lot of crunches, in a lot of lineups, and some initial crunches for me. Does he stand out to you this week? And if so, who else does? If not, who else does on this San Fran team?
Yeah, so we actually talked Tuesday, and I said Kelsey would be cash tournament favorite play. Wanting to see ownership, Kittle coming in a lot less, like half of Kelsey right now. I still think Kelsey's ownership is warranted with no Telvin Smith there, but it's hard to ignore that with Kittle in this matchup against Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay was actually okay last year at the tight end compared to just defending wide receivers, but Kittle's just – and a big thing looking at how DVP and DVOA against specific positions – the tight end is probably the one that's most volatile because if you're a team that has to face Kelsey and Kittle in the same year, you're clearly going to see much worse than you probably are. But it's just going to be skewed because there's so few good tight ends that can burn you. So I have interest in Jimmy G. A lot of people got so down on him after one drive in the preseason week 2. Looked fine in week 3, but people are just keeping that in mind and the injury. So yeah, Jimmy G and Kittle is a stack that I'm going to be getting to in some 20 maxes, potentially working with it in 3 max. But outside of that, the wide receivers are kind of up in the air. You have Goodwin, who's been very quiet because of just preseason injuries, not playing in the preseason. Then you have the total opposite of that in Dante Pettis, where still listed as the number 1 wide receiver. Overall, don't know what to expect. I think he's talented enough. I don't think the rise and fall of Dante Pettis from this preseason, from last year to this preseason, is real. I don't know why they were kind of giving him so much crap, at least the head coach and the media. But he seems to still be on this team as a number 1 wide receiver. I just don't know if I trust it. Debo Samuel is another guy, but as a rookie, Marcus Goodwin's probably the wide receiver I get to the most. But even then, we don't know what to expect from a guy who not much has come out about what his injury looks like and what his role is really going to be, although he's still listed as I believe, number 2 wide receiver on this team. So Kittle and Jimmy G is where I focus on. And then if you are going to stack the San Francisco side of it, I probably get to Goodwin, who's going to be at much lower ownership. And really all those guys will be.
Who did you say you think is the top receiver still on this team?
So right now, what's coming in is that it is Dante Pettis.
Okay, I thought you said Goodwin. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I didn't mishear you. Yeah, and you're talking about all the media nonsense that Shanahan's been tough on him, but then there's he just wants to help him, and I don't know.
I don't know how to take any of that. I don't know what was up with all that. Why would you do that,
dude? I'm just gonna assume. Right, I'm gonna assume that he's, like you said, still the guy, and still gonna get plenty of work. But Kittle is my favorite pass catching option here. Yep. If I'm making stacks, I'm going to have a Goodwin and Pettis in the pool as well. Like in terms of in the pool, in groups, make sure that you get some of them because it's a pick 'em. Both teams should score points, and both teams defensively in that secondary are really weak. So, other teams, I have no interest in their value receivers, but in an instance like this, I do have more interest in potentially going value on a team that should be competitive and should be able to put points on the board. Last thing here, Sal, running backs, Tevin Coleman, Matt Breida, break the backfield down, and then we got a couple minutes. We're just going to run it up to 1:00 because of how long we've gone. What do you have?
Yeah, so a lot was made yesterday, I think it was, with Matt Breida on the PR depth chart being listed as the number 1 running back. Don't look into that. Those are usually very wrong, and a lot of them, they don't take into account the coaching staff or anything in terms of the head coach, scouting team. None of those guys have say in that. It's mainly a PR thing.
It is exactly. The head coach is not sitting down and writing his depth chart up.
Yeah, so every single thing from preseason, every single thing that indications lead to Tevin Coleman will be getting the majority of the work, but that doesn't mean far majority. I think it's going to be closer to a 60-40 split than maybe a lot of people realize, with Tevin Coleman seeing 60% of the usage here. Matt Breida, a very elite pass-catching running back, probably going to see somewhere around 35 to 40%. That all said, it makes Matt Breida at his price point a GPP option for me, but neither of these guys I'll get to. I might have like one lineup out of 20 with a Matt Breida just for the upside of him in a pass-catching role, but you're still going to have Coleman as a pass catcher. So long story short, with all the stuff that's going around in that backfield, not much interest.
Yep, neither do I. Just because there are so many other spots where I feel a lot more confident in the workload. You'll hear people argue like, dude, play Breida, he'll be low owned. Okay, that's fine, but there are a lot of other low owned backs that are going to see pretty guaranteed work. And Breida's going to see work, but like you said, 60-40, is it going to be 40% Breida, 35%, 50-50? I don't really know. If I end up with a little bit, I'm fine, but I'm certainly not going to be overweight on him just because of the uncertainty in this backfield. But if you're trying to be different in tournaments, I do understand it. All right, there it is. 12 games up, 12 games down. Thanks for sticking with us. I'm going to ask you quickly, Sal. Thursday Night Football. And by the way, Live Before Lock happening tonight from 7:30 all the way run it up to 8:20. That will be all strictly Showdown Captain Mode. They got you covered. But since Sal's with me now, what's your quick take on how this game... Let me back up. Sorry, a lot of words at once here. Bear with me. I want to set it up nicely for Sal. Put it on the table. When it comes to showdowns, you're basically just trying to tell a story with your lineup and how the game is going to go. So instead of going through every player, what story do you see playing out today?
Yeah, so like you said, you have to kind of just have some game flow scenarios. The story that I see playing out today is kind of what Vegas is predicting, and that's what I want to go off of. If I'm somebody, for viewers watching, that is going to enter 1 to 2 lineups, is going to be to try and predict game flow of a game that stays close, a game where the Bears pass or rush defense is pretty good. So when Aaron Jones maybe gets stabilized, Rodgers in the offense through the passing game has to be the way that the ball moves. And on the other end of that, you have a improved, or at least in theory, improved Packers pass rush. So with a cheap Packers defense in showdown, that looks good for a guy in Trubisky who will make mistakes. Overall, though, I think it's a game where you get what you get, the 22 to 24 implied from both teams. And I think it's going to be mainly coming from the passing game. David Montgomery, the exciting running back, is somebody who stands out, but I don't think they unleash him for 25 carries. I expect somewhere around 15 tonight with Cohen still back there and a little bit of Mike Davis. So I'm keying in on both passing attacks. And when you're going to have a good amount of passing in a game. I like to look at the defenses. I don't expect Aaron Rodgers to struggle even against a good defense in terms of interceptions and making mistakes. So more so looking at a Packers defense, but really so wide receivers, quarterbacks, and a little bit of defenses in there is where I'm looking at. I'm not really focusing too much on the running backs here, although I do realize they're talented running backs. That's just a scenario for myself that I'm painting out the most tonight.
And just one question that we had way earlier in the show from Seth in our premium NFL chat in Slack, which you have access to if you become a premium member at awesomemode.com. NFL strategy, one word, is the sign-up code. He asked, would you go overweight or underweight on kickers and defenses tonight on this game?
I'm going to be going underweight on a kicker. The only defense that I would go overweight on is the Packers. I really don't have much interest in the Bears defense. And that's where I stand on that.
All right, beautiful. Let's take 5 minutes of questions and get out of here for the day. You guys have any questions, hit us with them in the YouTube chat or in Slack chat if you're premium members, and we'll bang them out rapid fire very quickly. I will ask you this much. Dog fan said, showdown tonight. Not sure where to start. The field will be on Adam Shaheen at captain. By the way, nickname Baby Gronk, in case you were wondering. Who do you want in captain spot?
All right, so it depends on the format. There's two guys that stand out, both being Packer receivers, because that's the game flow I'm going with. Obviously, Devontae Adams is a guy who's going to get every red zone target. He's not the surprise pick that people probably want to hear. But Geronimo Allison would be the other guy. He's a guy who's going to run a ton in the slot. He'll have the best matchup in the slot. He grades out for this offense with wide receiver coaches out there from Atlanta, and also Matt LaFleur spending some time there with Shanahan. I think he's going to be taking on sort of a Mohamed Sanu role in this offense. And before he got injured, he was on pace for 1,200 yards, 8 touchdowns. He has Aaron Rodgers' trust. So in a game where I'm expecting wide receivers to be in the mix, it's probably going to be sort of, for the cheaper end, a Geronimo Allison. I'm not going all the way down to an Adam Shaheen. It makes sense to have him in there if there's no Trey Burton as a guy who's going to be around the red zone, be on the field a lot. But I don't think in terms of a captain spot, does he do enough to warrant it? He could. I mean, these showdowns are so variant, but I'm not going to be getting there. For captain, it seems to me at least a tiny bit too cute. For your lineup, for sure, it makes sense.
Okay. A really interesting question here, and I think it has a nuanced answer. Who is your guys' favorite contrarian quarterback for this week? My answer, it was Ryan had said most confident contrarian QB. My answer is nuanced because I don't think there's going to be any mega chalk at quarterback.
Yeah.
Right now, Jameis Winston is 10% projected on Draftkings, and that's the highest of any quarterback. You have Mahomes, Wentz, Murray, Jackson, Cousins, all around 8, 9%, 7%. Like, I think Dak is interesting. You mentioned him coming in around 4%. There are a few, potentially Matt Stafford at a discount, but I don't know you need to get that contrarian at a position that has very, very flat ownership projections right now.
Yeah, I agree. It's the position in terms of points, stealings, everything that you're not going to get too much widespread. That's why you shouldn't overweight on one quarterback relative to just other positions, especially when price comes into play. But you hit on it a little bit. Dak Prescott would be the guy for me that I'm going to be getting to, and I really like that stack in Dallas.
Rajhog called me babe and said he loves my swag. Thanks, bruh. I'll take that all day. Let's see. Sal, do you still have love for Conley versus KC this weekend? Lafayette and Spags didn't mention him yesterday. You already answered that question. You said you do, right?
Yeah, if you're going to stack the Jacksonville side and you're not going for Fournette and Dede, Conley would be the next guy in there. And I have one lineup right now with that stack.
All right, last one. Damian Williams or Darius Geis? Feel free to say neither.
Yeah, I would say find something else. But if anything, Damian Williams, just because of the offense, the situation is much better than what you're getting in just Washington as like a 10-point underdog. So he's going to be a guy who I expect, if anybody in the pass catching game out of the backfield is going to do something big, it's going to be him. But again, you're looking at less than 15 touches overall probably.
All right, well, that'll do it for us. Great stuff, Sal. This is a lot of fun. Long show. They will be cut down a bit now that I have a better understanding of the dynamic between the two of us. I think we'll be able to condense it a little bit. But for the first week of the season, 2 hours isn't that much overboard.
Yeah, and I think the actual breakdown only lasted like an hour and 20 minutes, I think.
Yeah,
For 12 games, that's not terrible.
could be worse. Could be worse. Rajhog says, "Sal, babe, your jawline is elite." This
Wait,
guy's
are we still
going
live? Did he
off.
say that?
What?
Are we still live? Oh my god.
Oh yeah, that's real. That's real. Hey, take it as a compliment. Hold your
Yeah.
head high, walk outside, and show off that jawline, man. Anyway, we appreciate all you guys hanging out and sticking with us till the end. It was a lot of fun today. Check out Tuesday and Wednesday's strategy shows because what we're going to do is we're covering something different every single day, Monday through Friday. Tomorrow will be Manny Laura. Really happy to have him with us. And Chris Randone going over Fantasy Cruncher and the best ways to do things. We got everything Monday through Friday. Hopefully you join us each day of the week as we kick you off into the season. Sal, any last words before we head out?
No, this is a ton of fun. I mean, I'm a Packers fan, so this is a very good day overall. Game starts tonight. Football's back. So I'll be here live Saturday with Chris Randone to kind of finish up everything that we're looking at for the slate, final ownership projections, all that. So I'll see everybody then here. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
Oh, that's beautiful. We got confirmed on Saturdays, huh? All right.
Yep. Yeah.
Good stuff. Monday through Saturday. That's how we do it at Awesemo, man. We get you guys content in and out, but we're not about that quantity over quality. We're about both. And hopefully we prove that to you each and every day. If you agree, if you like the show, hit us with a thumbs up on your way out. We'll be back with you tomorrow and on Saturday to close out this week on the strategy show. Good luck and stick around. A ton of programming coming up throughout the day, baseball and everything else right here at awesemo.com. We'll see you soon.